Comenzamos.
The Chilean Ministry of Energy. I am broadcasting live from the offices of the ministry to all over the world. We are proud to say that today's audience covers more than 60 countries in the 5 continents, and I invite you all to leave a short message in the chat stating from where you are connected. You can also use the chat for sending comments and, of course, asking questions to our distinguished panelists. Before to start, it's important to remind you that in the landing page of the event, you will have the possibility to choose the language you would like to listen to the conference to. The realization of this conference has been possible thanks to the joint efforts of this ministry and the International Energy Agency. In fact, this conference builds on a panel which was co-organized by our institutions during the Energy Day in the framework of the COP25. And it will focus on building momentum for action on energy efficiency at the international, regional, and national level. Allow me now to switch into Spanish, please. Bienvenidos nuevamente, bienvenidas a la Conferencia Internacional.
Welcome all to the International Conference on Energy Efficiency, an ace up the sleeve for energy transition. Before looking at the program for this event, I'd like to briefly thank the numerous entities that have provided support. The Agency for Energetic Sustainability, ANESCO, ACERA, ACESOL, GIS, Generadores de Chile, and Revista Electricidad. Over the next 3 years, we're going to be discussing energy efficiency from different standpoints, geographical and thematic. We're going to start with the International Energy Agency, and then we're going to hear different success stories and good practices before looking at the domestic situation and the public policies that the Ministry of Energy in Chile has been promoting. And finally, we'll end this conference with a thematic approach. As you can see by looking at the program that should be on the screen, today we're going to have a number of interventions by distinguished panelists. You will all be able to put your questions through the chat and the different transmission channels. We'll try to answer as many questions as possible, but obviously I'd like to apologize in advance if we don't have enough time to take all of your questions and if we have to make a selection. I'd also like to recall that in the landing page of this event, you can choose the language you want to listen to the speakers in, either English, Spanish, or the original audio. Without further ado, I'd like to open the conference, and I'm going to give the floor to the Ministry of Energy, Señor Juan Carlos Jobet, who is going to welcome us. I can see that he's here with us. I can see him on the screen. Welcome, Minister Sir, and I give you the floor. Good morning, Federico. Thank you very much. Good morning to you all. Good afternoon for those who are on a different time slot. Thank you for being here. I hope you're all looking after yourself. and I hope you're all safe.
Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I want to say hi to our international audience and thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm going to make my intervention in Spanish. So as Federico said, those of you who want to listen to it in English can switch to your translation. I want to say hi especially to our friends at the International Energy Agency. I see Dave Turk and Brian Motherway. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for the leadership the agency exercises every day in the international discussion on energy and climate change. We have been together at several different forums and conferences over the last months, and we really appreciate your leadership, your support. The agency has provided us an invaluable help in the discussion, building, designing, and pushing forward our energy agenda and our clean energy transition. So thank you so much, and thank you for the pleasure of organizing this event together. Let me switch back to Spanish now. Quiero agradecer a todos los que nos han ayudado a
I'd like
organizar.
to thank all those who have helped to organize this event, in particular the IEA and the Ministry of Chile, and UNESCO in particular, because the agency UNESCO really played a leadership role in our country, pushing for energy transition, and they've provided a constant support to our ministry. Well, just to frame the discussion we're going to have, today we're going through unprecedented times, really. Several months and probably years that we'll all remember. And when we look back, we'll remember these months, and we will not forget them, because these have been very difficult weeks and months because of the pandemic, because of the economic recession in Chile and in all countries in the world. This has been the most serious crisis in many decades. We also have the threat of climate change on the horizon, and I'm convinced that this is the most the biggest threat, and our generation will have to deal with that threat and that challenge for the sake of future generations. So we're going to have to be very careful in the decisions we take. So, of course, we have huge challenges, but we also have huge opportunities. Technology is really speeding up, and I think that the pandemic has really highlighted the capacity that human beings, countries, and societies have. We're able to adapt. We've changed the way we work. We've changed the way we travel. We've changed the way we go about our daily life to protect our health, to protect our family and our loved ones and our communities. And I think that capacity to adapt that we have demonstrated over the past month really gives us hope. And we can clearly say that we are able to protect ourselves and prosper. And so I think we can be optimistic regarding our capacity to deal with the threat of climate change in an ambitious way. But contrary to the pandemic, climate change is something that hasn't happened quickly. It happened slowly, gradually. And so this is why we've been complacent. And we haven't really measured the urgency of the situation.
En 2050. A pesar de que somos un país pequeño en vías de desarrollo y de que nuestras emisiones de gases de efecto invernadero representan menos del 0,3% de las emisiones globales, nosotros tenemos la convicción de que tenemos que hacer lo correcto, tenemos que seguir lo que nos ha dicho con mucha claridad la ciencia.
We are convinced that we have to follow what science is telling us that we need to do in order to be neutral, carbon neutral by 2050. We have embraced that challenge in our country. Almost 80% of the GHG emissions come from the industry. So we need to act. And what we are doing is closing all our carbon plants that last year represented 40% of power production. They will be closed before 2040. We have a very ambitious agenda in transportation. We are also ambitious in green hydrogen We believe it can be a huge source of emission reductions. But when we go back to our figures and with that goal of carbon neutrality by 2050, energy efficiency is the pillar of our approach, and it will mean a 40% approximately of the reductions that we need to reach by 2050. This figure is the one that we have set for Chile, and it goes in the same vein as the figures published by the IEA at a global level, meaning the objectives that we need to achieve in a global level. There are many other benefits coming from energy efficiency in our context. For example, households can reach high efficiencies in their daily consumption in the face of the current crisis. In countries as as our own, that is a developing country, any kind of saving in households is going to be very important in the coming months and years. Energy efficiency helps to reduce carbon footprint, and is related to the products that we buy and also allows us to be more productive. I believe that energy efficiency is going to be a source of job creation, a very important source of job creation for the recovery, economic recovery we're boosting in Chile and the rest of the world. We are developing our strategy in a very important moment, and I believe that energy efficiency is going to be put forward in the agenda. Many times we focus on carbon plants, green hydrogen, but as I say, almost 40% of our emissions reduction to be carbon neutral come from energy efficiency. So we need to focus on that and underscore the importance of this approach for the public. We are committed to this agenda. We have already started energy labeling for 28 products, and we will reach more products by the end of the year, covering 80% of household consumption. In buildings, there is also a voluntary energy labeling program that we hope it will be compulsory in the framework of the energy efficiency law that will be passed in the future. And I hope that we will be able to push the construction of new buildings that could be categorized as zero emission buildings. In other sectors as lighting and fridges, air conditioning and other products, we are already having very good results. 1/3 of households in Chile use wood as a fuel for heating. And this is something we're working on as well. On the other hand, regarding cars and vehicles, we are also working on that. And there is a bill of law on energy efficiency that will focus on all the different sectors: building, public and private sector, transportation, industry, mining. That is the main consumer, energy consumer, presenting huge opportunities in energy efficiency. And we hope that in the following years, our work will be giving great results. I would like to conclude by thanking the International Energy Agency also to underscore the importance of learning from each other, to exchange best experience, and to thank all of the panelists that will speak today, the members of the agency, IDB, IKEA, ADEBEL, Sustainability Energy Agency, European Federation, APIA, and many others. I hope that you will have a fantastic debate, and I would like to thank you all for your participation. Thank you. Thank you on behalf of the different panelists for your words, Mr. Mr. Minister, and thank you for your presence today. Let me switch to English now to introduce our next speaker.
A real friend of this ministry. Our institutions have a solid and fruitful relation, which results in a long-term collaboration on several topics, such as some clean energy ministerial programs, other relevant areas like flexibility of power system, or for instance, the energy efficiency. Dr. Fatih Birol is the Executive Director of the International Energy Agency since September 2015. Under his leadership, the agency has become a global hub for clean energy technologies and energy efficiency. He has kindly recorded an opening address, which will be available only in English. And after that, Mr. David Turk, Acting Deputy Executive Director of the IEA, will be live closing the opening session. Please, now we can see the video.
Minister Jobe, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, greetings from Paris to all of you. It is an honor for me to open this event together with Minister Jobe. The importance of the topic of this event, energy efficiency, can hardly be overstated. I have declared energy efficiency as the first fuel. We have oil, gas, solar, wind, nuclear, but in my view, energy efficiency is the first fuel, and in fact, the very first fuel. Some countries have the potential for oil, others solar, others coal, others gas, but all the countries in the world have energy efficiency potential. So as such, we think at the IEA, energy efficiency is the first fuel. It is good to address our climate change problems. It is good to address air pollution problems. It is good for economic competitiveness. And in addition those, in these difficult days, going through the pandemic, the economic recession, there is one issue, a dark cloud on the economies of the world, which is unemployment. And in my view, energy efficiency is a job-creating machine. We made a study together with the IMF and published 2 months ago, a sustainable recovery plan, and we look at all the energy options, how much jobs they would create, power plants, grids, energy efficiency, and energy efficiency comes by far number one source of creating jobs, especially in the building sector. As such, in addition to the other benefits of energy efficiency, addressing the climate change, but what we see, the biggest chunk of the reductions in the emissions, global emissions, need to come from energy efficiency improvement. It is about 40% of the job can be done by energy efficiency globally. And I would like to, in fact, congratulate the Chilean government in their climate action, climate strategy. and his speech he gave in Madrid, the COP meeting, a passionate speech, and I follow his speeches. We were together in different occasions, energy summits, ministerial meetings, and I always listen to Minister Jobe with great interest, and I was very impressed how Chile takes the clean energy transitions so seriously and makes concrete steps in that direction. At the IEA, we are very happy to work very closely with Chile. I very much hope that Chile, currently an accession country to IEA, will soon become a full member. My colleagues and myself are doing our best to accelerate this process. And I am also very happy that through our Clean Energy Transition Program, we were able to support Chile for the great work they are doing on energy efficiency and the flexibility of the grids. We were very happy to support that, and I really hope that your energy efficiency law will be very soon a law in the book, signed and sealed, and I am looking forward to get this good news from my good friend, Minister Jobe, sometime soon. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going through a very bleak year in the world. Having said that, I have never been so optimistic about the future of clean energy transitions. There are several reasons for that. One of them is, in my view, solar becoming so cheap, becoming the cheapest source of electricity generation in many countries around the world. Technologies are improving in many countries. Commitments of the countries, companies are coming one after another.
Thank you very much, Fatih. And let me express a good morning to Minister Jobe in particular. And thank you very much, not only for your kind words about the collaboration with the IEA, which, as Dr. Birol mentioned, we very, very much appreciate, but also, Minister, thank you for your tireless efforts, not only in Chile, but internationally. I've had the privilege of seeing you speak several times over the last few weeks, always inspirational, always with passion, and your global leadership is certainly very much appreciated, not only by you, but your excellent colleagues at the ministry and in the government more generally. So thank you for very, very much for all the partnership. Let me just add a few words to what you all heard from Dr. Birol in the video, the importance of energy efficiency and the value of the kind of collaboration that we're all here today, not in person, unfortunately, but virtually to discuss. As Fatih pointed out, energy efficiency is always important, the first fuel. But in this time of COVID pandemic and economic recovery, it's even more so. Put simply, efficiency is a jobs machine, incredibly important. Every government around the world with the political imperative to save jobs, to build jobs back. But it's not just jobs. Efficiency, of course, can provide better air quality, emissions reductions, consumer savings on energy bills, and resilient energy systems. Resiliency being so important, not only now, but into the future. For more than 6 years now, the IEA, under the leadership of Brian and Edith and our terrific energy efficiency colleagues, have been working with governments, major emerging economies, our own members around the world, not only growing our IEA family, but building a stronger and stronger global network on energy efficiency. This work continues to grow. Each day, each week, a bigger and bigger priority, certainly for us at the IEA, and I think a bigger and bigger priority it needs to be certainly for the world at large as well. And we're seeing results from this 6-year enhancement, the 6-year growth of energy efficiency in the IEA. First, we have better data and statistics. We know more about what's going on. We know more about what's worked. Secondly, we can share real-world success stories and cautionary tales from around the world, capturing what's happening and sharing it efficiently for others to learn from. And third, we're spending more time on implementation. We're spending more time taking these global best practices, the best world-class data, tailoring this global wealth of expertise to particular context to deliver real-world results. That's in the end what we're after, is real-world results, making people's lives better around the world. We have terrific examples, not only from Chile, but from Brazil, from Mexico, from Argentina, countries throughout Latin America, and around the world as well. At the IEA, we like to think that our mission is to support key decision makers, public and private, as you shape and secure a secure and sustainable energy future for your citizenry and for all around the world. But it's up to you, the decision makers, to seize those opportunities. And it's very gratifying, as Dr. Birol said, for us to see and for everyone else to see Chile doing exactly this, seizing opportunities on efficiency in renewables, in hydrogen, as Minister Jobé also discussed. In 2018, for example, we published an in-depth review of Chile's energy policies, acknowledging the terrific progress in Chile tapping its energy efficiency potential, but also highlighting areas where more could be done. Chile is a leader in setting ambitious targets for carbon neutrality. And again, you heard the minister speak about those ambitious targets. Even more importantly, I'll say, and as the new energy efficiency law in Chile shows, Chile is putting in place the legislation that will need, that is necessary to make those changes actually happen. Again, to get that real world implementation that all of us should be centrally focused on. As this conference itself exemplifies, we can learn from each other to inform our own policies, our own decision making, our own programs going forward. So again, it's a pleasure to be here today. On behalf of all of us at the IEA, we very much value the partnership with Chile, the partnership with all of you participating in this conference. So thank you, Minister Jobé. Thank you for all the officials at the Ministry of Energy for all the excellent collaboration and leadership, not only in your country, not only in the region, but throughout the world. The world needs Chilean leadership. All of us at the IEA look forward to the upcoming opportunities to deepen this cooperation, to learn from all of you, and to take the lessons and successes from Chile to the rest of the world as well. So thank you very much again for having this opportunity, and back to you, Federico. Thank you.
Many thanks both to Dr. Birol and to Mr. Turk for your interventions and very, very interesting words. We are glad to keep strengthening the solid relation between the Ministry of Energy and the International Energy Agency. And we are confident that together with the international community, we will succeed in reaching a common goal, the common goal of carbon neutrality by 2050. I would like now to introduce today's keynote speaker. Dr. Brian Motherway is the head of the Energy Efficiency Division at the International Energy Agency, and he oversees a range of analytical and outreach programs supporting energy efficiency globally. He will give us a speech on the opportunity that energy efficiency offers through insights from the IEA's most recent analysis and from its international collaborations. Brian, don't forget to unmute your microphone, please. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Federico. And buenos dias. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We're very pleased to be talking with so many people in Chile and the region and around the world on this very important topic. And I want to add my thanks to our partners in Chile, to the minister and all of our colleagues and friends for working so hard to put together what is a great conference today. And of course, I want to commend Chile for its great international leadership, and particularly through the new energy efficiency law, which I am convinced is going to be a very powerful and important law to the benefit of all the people of Chile, to the region and to the world. As we have already heard from our opening speakers, energy efficiency is being recognized more and more as a key global opportunity, both in terms of its economic benefits, its social benefits, and of course, its environmental benefits. And these issues are more important than ever in the world we find ourselves in October 2020, when all parts of the world have had a very difficult year and many people have been through very difficult times. And we see that these times are not fully over. We see that many regions of the world are still under various degrees of lockdown, as everybody listening to us here today knows. The future is uncertain, and of course we wish all people well in terms of their health and well-being, and we hope that we can emerge from this crisis stronger than ever and as soon as possible. This crisis has many dimensions in terms of changing our lives and the energy and environmental implications of that. First of all, of course, we know that in cities around the world, our movements have been greatly restricted. In some cases, we have seen movements starting to happen again. In other cases, not so much. It is a very mixed pattern, and it remains uncertain for the foreseeable future. At the same time, we also know that this has had a tremendous impact on how we are using energy, not least, of course, in oil demand, particularly related to transport, as well as to other sectors. And we know that global oil demand will be greatly reduced right across 2020 at the very least. Similarly, we know that how we are using electricity has changed in the last 6 months. The pattern is much more mixed. Of course, many of us are spending our working times at home and using electricity in different ways, but maybe we are not using electricity in the same way in our offices or in our shops and other facilities. So the patterns are very mixed, and I think the watchword is uncertainty. And of course, this creates many challenges, both economically and environmentally. So where do we go from here? Well, the IEA has been strongly calling for, since day one really, led by our executive director, calling for strong linkages between economic recovery and clean energy transition goals. And we have been working with governments around the world to examine exactly what is the potential for sustainable recoveries that align the immediate imperatives of job creation and economic stimulus with our longer term and more global clean energy and decarbonization goals. We know that in the last global economic crisis of 2009, of course, greenhouse gas emissions fell in 2009 because of the reduction in economic activity. But they quickly rebounded. As economies recovered and as activity resumed, emissions grew to a highest point than ever. Now in 2020, we see a historic fall in global greenhouse gas emissions, probably the biggest fall we have ever seen. But this is not something to be celebrated. The fall in emissions this year is for the wrong reasons. It's because we have been restricted, our health and well-being has been damaged, our economic livelihoods have been damaged, and our activities have been curtailed. And the question is, after we emerge from this crisis, what happens next? There are two potential pathways. One is that we go back to our old ways and we resume the kind of practices that we saw that were leading to ongoing growth of greenhouse gas emissions and no enhancement of sustainability through the economic recovery. But the alternative path is to build sustainability, energy efficiency, and greenhouse gas reduction into our recovery policies and actions so that we set our global greenhouse gas emissions on a permanent downward trend as we head towards zero and we try to deliver our international commitments on our environmental imperatives. The IEA has plotted this pathway through its Sustainable Recovery Plan, which shows the kind of actions that can align the shorter term and longer term goals. In the IEA Sustainable Recovery Plan, we examine how the elements required to boost the economy can be aligned with creating jobs and at the same time with improving energy resilience and sustainability. And these come together in the goals of the IEA's Sustainable Recovery Plan. It's very important in this conference to notice that the biggest single element of this Sustainable Recovery Plan is energy efficiency. And I think that will come as no surprise to many people listening to us today, because we know that energy efficiency, as has already been said, is a jobs machine. It's very labor intensive in sectors such as retrofitting buildings, building new facilities, upgrading industrial facilities, building new infrastructure, All of these activities, if correctly stimulated and supported by policy, can create jobs that are sustainable and strong, and can also be created quickly, but at the same time can lock in tremendous efficiency gains that we will benefit for many decades into the future. And so it is alignment of these goals and energy efficiency's opportunity to drive this that we are talking about here today. And I'm sure this kind of thinking and this kind of strategic direction is underpinning Chile's strong leadership on energy efficiency, as we are discussing in this conference. The Sustainable Recovery Plan sees public expenditure and policy leadership driving the unlocking of private capital in all sectors. And of course, this is why energy efficiency can be seen as such a great business opportunity in terms of its investment potential, its job creation, and its opportunity for businesses to generate new lines of activity, develop new markets, and be rewarded for their energy efficiency innovation. And we can see here that this can happen in all sectors, and can really see how public funding can drive tremendous progress in private investment and benefits to both businesses and to citizens. And of course, as I've said, when you look at where the jobs can be created, we see that energy efficiency offers many of the key opportunities in terms of jobs created per unit of investment by the public or the private sector. And that, of course, is what is driving our discussion today, that energy efficiency can create jobs while also locking in tremendous progress on the efficiency, resilience, and affordability of our energy systems of the future as we move towards clean energy transitions and decarbonization. Because we know as we look forward, energy efficiency can bring benefits to all levels of the economy. IEA analysis shows that if all we did was to exploit all of the technologies that are already available to us and are already fully cost effective, in the next 2 decades, we could double global energy efficiency. And that would mean billions of savings in energy imports, billions of savings to industry, and of course, billions of savings to each and every one of us as householders and citizens in our energy consumption. Energy efficiency is unique in offering this range of opportunities across the economy and across society. And that is why the IEA has placed such a firm focus on the importance of energy efficiency and policies to deliver that. And this is why about a year ago, the executive director established a new process called the Global Commission for Urgent Action on Energy Efficiency, where we brought together ministers, heads of state, CEOs, and thought leaders from around the world to think about how could governments accelerate progress on energy efficiency through stronger policy action. The commission members, who came from every corner of the world and every perspective, spent a year looking at the best practices they could find around the world and condensing it into 10 key recommendations aimed at governments around the world who seek to enact stronger policies to deliver faster progress on energy efficiency. The recommendations range from prioritizing energy efficiency as a job-creating sector to leadership in the public sector, the deployment of greater levels of finance and capital, to engaging citizens and prioritizing and raising ambition for energy efficiency. I would commend to you all the recommendations of the Global Commission, plus the vast body of knowledge they brought together in terms of global best practice on how to do energy efficiency well and how to make faster progress. And of course, we will soon be adding more and more of Chile's experience to this bank of knowledge as its progress greatly accelerates on energy efficiency due to the strong measures it is now putting in place. Finally, I want to say to you that IEA is your willing partner in working towards all aspects of sustainable recovery, clean energy, and of course, energy efficiency. You will find on our website a huge amount of current resources, including ongoing tracking of current energy trends in the crisis, as well as quite a range of analysis looking at what we have learned from experience around the world and from previous crises to advise governments on what actions are available to them, how best to select, design, and implement the policies that will maximize the benefits for their entire economies and societies. And of course, that is a key focus of today's discussion. We are very pleased and proud to be co-hosting this conference with our friends in the government of Chile, and we look forward to the rest of the discussion that will take place during this conference. So thank you very much for your attention.
Many thanks, Brian, for your speech and for presenting such an engaging vision on energy efficiency. May I capitalize your presence here today, asking you a couple of yes or no questions?
Please do, Federica.
Okay, so of course you can complement your thought with a short statement. But first of all, in your opinion, should the state be the main promoter of energy efficiency?
So Federica, the state should be one of the main promoters. What's unique about energy efficiency is it is a whole of society project. The state needs to lead, it needs to put the right policies in place, but after that, enterprise and citizens and all sectors need to be actively involved in a collective project to deliver the opportunities that efficiency offers.
Okay, and in your opinion, are regulations the most effective mechanisms to move along with energy efficiency?
Regulation is essential, Federico. Many of the biggest successes we see around the world in energy efficiency progress in terms of creating economic and environmental benefit have been driven by regulation. But of course, there are many other tools available as well, such as market mechanisms, incentives, and many types of engagement. We really encourage governments and countries to look at the whole suite. And we know that there are so many good examples around the world to learn from to get the right policies in place.
Okay, thank you. And finally, a broader question. In your opinion, is technology the key element for a successful energy transformation?
Energy efficiency is a huge business opportunity for all kinds of industry, including technology manufacturers and technology providers. And I think more and more, particularly as we see innovation in digitalization and artificial intelligence and mobile devices, we will see technology playing a huge role. But that's not to underplay the role of all of us in terms of our daily behavior, in terms of our activities in business, and in terms of our collective ambition and vision as societies. All of these things matter.
Crystal clear, Brian, many thanks. And once again, thanks a lot for being here with us today.
Thank you, Federica. Thank you very much.
Now, move on with the program. And I would like to present our first panel, which is focused on international experiences with energy efficiency. It takes a look across the value chain to provide insights into how policies and strategies are advancing energy efficiency around the world. What has worked, what hasn't, and how we can get to scale. We are pleased to have such a distinguished panelist and a great moderator, Ms. Edith Bayer, Energy Efficiency Specialist at the IEA. Edith has more than 10 years of experience in the field of energy efficiency and demand-side response. She supervises the work of the agency on these topics in Latin America. Welcome, Edith. Please take the floor to introduce the panel and your panelists, and don't forget to unmute your microphone, please.
Thank you, Federico. And thank you to the Ministry of Energy of Chile. It's a pleasure to be here and to be involved in this event together with you. And of course, good morning and good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world, to our audience. So our first panel is focused on international experiences with energy efficiency. And before I introduce the panelists, I'd like to say a few words of introduction just to frame the discussion. So we've heard quite a bit about energy efficiency in the context of decarbonization and the multiple benefits of energy efficiency in the introductory speeches. And I mean, one thing that we can lose track of is that on the one hand, energy efficiency is quite simple. On the other hand, it's quite complicated. It's simple because when you boil it down to its essence, it's really about using energy more efficiently. It's about reducing energy waste. It's about creating energy services with less energy. And that's a pretty simple concept to grasp. And it has to do with technology. It has to do with improving processes, with improving how we manage energy. And it also has to do with behavior. But on the other hand, it's really complicated because everything from your smartphone to this conference system here, to complex manufacturing processes, and everything in your building, including the materials that it was built with, all have to do with energy efficiency. And so there are a lot of actors involved. There are a lot of different viewpoints, and it's a really robust and complex area. And we see that digital technologies further enrich the opportunities for energy efficiency. Things like sensors, like smart meters, machine learning. There are a lot of opportunities that we see opening up. But on the other hand, we also see, again, increasing complexity in understanding how we can advance with energy efficiency with the help of these tools. And we also know that while there's this tremendous potential, tremendous cost-effective potential, it's not being met. And it's largely because of many barriers that prevent energy efficiency from happening. Everything from informational barriers to split incentives, to the way that things are done and changing cultures in terms of how we do things. We know that we have the policies and technologies today to meet the energy efficiency objectives that have been presented today. But we know that it requires a dialogue, and it requires including many different perspectives. And this is why I'm so happy that we have a panel presenting different perspectives from around the world on energy efficiency, from really leaders in energy efficiency. We have Paulo Falcioni, who's the Director General of APLIA, which represents the EU appliances, the appliances industry in Europe, and is active in Europe and around the world. We have Christina Gamboa, who's the CEO of the World Green Building Council. Karol Gobczynski, Head of Climate and Energy at Inca Group, better known colloquially as IKEA. And Pascal Guillaume, who is the President of the EU Federation of Intelligent Energy Efficiency Services. So I'd like to just explain how this is going to work. Each of our panelists has a brief presentation. So we're going to run through the presentations, and then we have a chunk of time at the end, about a half hour for Q&A. And we're very much looking forward to getting questions from you. So please do enter your questions in, and we have people monitoring the questions on our various YouTube channels. So now I'd like to introduce Paulo Falcioni, our first speaker. Paulo is active in Europe and internationally. He's one of the founders of the International Roundtable of Household Appliance Manufacturers Associations. He's also a board member of the Smart Energy Europe, which is an organization looking at demand-side management. So he has a very interesting perspective on the role of appliances. And Paulo, I'd like to give you the floor. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Edith. It is a pleasure to be here. And as a representative of the home appliance industry in Europe, it is also a pleasure to me to be a guest of a conference host in Chile, which, to our account, it has 26 mandatory requirements covering 38 appliances, making it the most comprehensive mandatory energy levy program in the world. So it's really a pleasure to be here and share the experiences from a European perspective, because as we have heard, the energy efficiency, it is a global issue, and only by learning each other, we can then take the best course of action. I would like to start by saying that we actually are on the same page, because we do believe in transparency to consumers as one of the key leverages to tell consumers what appliance is better than another. So I'm speaking about the energy labeling, which is used in Europe, and it is used as well in Chile, because that is a key tool to help consumers in making the right choice at the shop floor. But then there is the other side of the policy legislation, which is making sure that only good enough appliances are placed on the market. And that is called the minimum efficiency performance requirement using a worldwide legislation. It is called eco-design using a more European targeted legislation. So those are the two elements, the push and pull elements, that together are delivering energy efficiency on the ground. Now, we have heard that energy efficiency is the first fuel, that is a job creation opportunity, but how actually does it work on the floor? And that is my contribution to the debate today. And I will start by checking what has been the increase in energy efficiency of dishwashers in Europe. Let me take one example, dishwashers. In 2010, there has been the introduction of pluses in the energy label. So you can see that in 2010, practically most of the appliances were in A class, which was at that moment the most efficient class of appliances. Immediately after the introduction of a new legislation that could let consumers know how better products are in an energy efficiency scale, then you can see that now, 2018, which is the latest year that we have available, more than half of the market is in the A++, which is then the most energy efficient class that we have today. And that has paved the way to the next generation of energy label, which will be then enter into force starting from next year, which will give another push to the market. And that chart alone shows how important it is the working together between policymakers that are setting ambitious objectives and industry, which is actually delivering on those premises. If I take then the...
Paulo, I'm sorry, the slides don't seem to be changing. So I just wanted to let you know because we're not seeing the switch in slides.
Oh, okay. Okay, then let me see. Let me see, what can I do?
Okay, now we see it. Thank you.
Okay, very good. So that is the energy efficiency improvement that I was commenting. And maybe you can see here that by 2010, all of the appliances were in A class. And now in 2018, there is a very high penetration of most efficient appliances. So if we take then the dishwasher as an example, and we look at what could be the possible contribution of energy efficiency coming from the higher penetration of dishwasher, then let's have a look at what it is today, the current penetration rate in Chile. According to our latest estimation, is around 5%. Assume that it is 5%. If it is 3, 10, we can scale up the numbers accordingly. Which means that there is a huge opportunity space in order to increase the energy efficiency in a specific country, just driving the penetration of one specific product, which is dishwashers. Now, how much would actually this opportunity space be? Well, we made a couple of calculations, and there are two key improvements. One is in the water consumption. By cleaning dishes by hand, we use a lot of water without us even taking account of that. For cleaning 13 place setting, so a place setting is dishes for one person and cutlery for one person, 13 place settings, it takes around 110 liters by doing that by hand. By doing that using a dishwasher, it takes 10 liters. So you can understand that the difference is huge. By considering this difference and multiplying by the opportunity space, in a single year in Chile, it could be saved the equivalent of 65,000 Olympic swimming pools. An Olympic swimming pool is 50 meters by 25 by at least 2 meters. That's the amount of water that could be saved every year if the penetration rate of dishwasher was 100%. In terms of energy efficiency, how much would that give actually to Chile as a country? The energy saving, it would be in the range of 1.53% of the Chile yearly energy use. So this is to give you a quantitative information and assessment of how much actually energy efficiency means for a country in terms of water, which is a resource, and we know that it is a scarce resource in a lot of places in the world, and energy. How do we get there? That is the next question, because we heard from Brian that actually public funding can actually drive this penetration. And actually, we believe that there are a number of possible options, and I would like to discuss that maybe with the panel and take questions there, because we believe that in changing also the way in which appliances are using, going, for instance, for an appliance as a service model, could drive the penetration. There are several examples around in Europe. Incentives are, I would say, a golden key to increase the penetration rate of appliances. We have seen in Europe several examples in several countries where, when incentives were placed on the table, then the take-up of most efficient appliances skyrocketed. And of course, subsidies that could be applied under certain conditions. And that is the full package of measures that are, to me, a complementary leverage to the policy. So we have policy on one side, which has to set reasonable expectations. We have industry that should be able to deliver. And then we have the third arm, which is we have to help consumers to get the benefit of energy efficiency. And I would like to close here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paulo, for a very visual, I would say, presentation that really gives an image of what just one change, one improvement in energy efficiency in one appliance category can do. So our next speaker is Christina Gamboa, who is the CEO of the World Green Building Council. Before joining the Green Building Council, the Global Green Building Council, she was CEO of the Colombia Green Building Council, where under her leadership, Colombia met significant milestones and enabled sustainability in construction to in fact become mainstream in her home country. So Christina, without further ado, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Buenos dias. Hello, everyone from around the world. Thank you very much for the kind invitation to speak to you about, yes, the global sustainable building movement, and I guess the steps towards the highest energy efficiency and enhanced climate action in the world that we're living today. So a little bit about the World Green Building Council. It's a global action network of around 70 green building councils, and there are 36,000 members. And we're catalyzing the uptake of sustainable buildings for everyone, everywhere. We recently launched our bold strategy, Sustainable Buildings for Everyone, Everywhere, and we're transforming the building and construction sector around 3 strategic impact areas, which are interrelated. And if you like, they just exemplify a holistic view of sustainability for the built environment. And that is climate action, resources and circularity. The circular economy is very much in support of our very high energy efficiency goals, of course. And at the heart, of course, health and well-being. We now know that buildings play a huge role in enhancing indoor air quality and making sure that we can have the best infrastructure possible. And I guess, as you saw from the introduction, from my journey in the movement, I would like to reflect that, to put it in other words, sustainability in infrastructure and in buildings in particular means better quality infrastructure. And as we have better awareness that this best practice is available, we are just making sure that all these assets are actually future-proofed and in line with matching investor demands. We now see a responsible investment movement backing up, let's say, the needs for climate risks to be addressed in investments in infrastructure. And of course, sustainable buildings, that as we saw from Minister Jovet, Sustainability in infrastructure and in housing, for example, goes to government goals of delivering better homes that actually address the need to provide efficiency in expenses for households to use that money for other needs as their families go along in their lives. And of course, I see a great penetration around the world of the concept of green buildings or sustainable buildings, if you like, as I'm framing it here, a holistic view on this. And pretty much we have put energy efficiency up front and center on the need of a sector that probably around the world was very conservative, but with the decarbonization goals, with the climate action plans, with cities taking action also in policy, we have seen how the sector with the right policy signals can transform. And so going back to the introduction, also the right policy signals here are key for all ambitions moving forward. And since at World GBC, we have been around for several years in terms of the uptake of these solutions and taking into account the climate science, we are very much behind that sustainable recovery report of the IEA that flags that energy efficiency in buildings is one of the key solutions for this green jobs machine that we need around the world for the green recovery. But going beyond that, we know as countries in Chile have signed on a pledge to be carbon neutral by 2050, that energy efficiency in our movement has to progress. And that's why we are, let's say, shifting the language also to include that sustainability has to be paired with a new horizon, and that means net zero carbon buildings. And I was very happy to hear the minister that he has it on his agenda for homes. Why do we think that net zero is key? Because it brings around equity. It brings around a solution to one of the biggest problems in terms of the construction sector that they face, and it's promoting the highest energy efficiency possible. If it's one of the sectors that can deliver one of the biggest wins, then it should aim, we believe it can aim high, and it should aim high to really support those reductions in emissions going forward. And of course, in particular, in regions like Latin America, we're still urbanizing at a very high rate. There's a lot of unprecedented growth going around the world, demand for natural resources, and there's energy waste in buildings. And that means significant levels of emissions. So through this campaign, our Advancing Net Zero campaign, we're advocating towards a shift towards performance-based solutions. So if the sustainable buildings movement was bringing awareness and we have a good penetration of better designs, better buildings, better infrastructure, now the call is understanding the performance of buildings, understanding that data is key for us to make better decisions. And this is why we're also calling for a whole life vision, that by 2050, in line with all these net zero country goals, all buildings should be operating at net zero, including existing. And that means a radical transformation in the way we address energy efficiency in buildings, addressing the slow innovation progress sometimes that we see in this sector, and that will have huge implications for the value chain. And that means that policy and right policy signals have the key to unlock that the sector invests in the right direction. Around the world, there's a lot of activity in this space, and there's examples here of best practice on tools, programs, and resources from our green building councils from around the world that are promoting the urgency and achievability of the very high energy efficiency or net zero carbon buildings that drive the industry capacity to deliver them. There's this application of net zero for each market, of course, depends on the context, and we understand that it may sound a little bit out there, but if you look at the renewables revolution, and we heard that the prices of renewables are in their lowest ever, there is here something, a combination of addressing the need to really reduce radically emissions, improve the quality of infrastructure today, because the decisions made today are locking in inefficiencies into the future, and key principles to address best practice again in operational emissions with a common approach that gives flexibility for national markets. And I guess I just would like to celebrate our partner in Chile, the GBC Chile. They are part of our Advancing Net Zero project. And as you know from the opportunities that the energy efficiency law is bringing into Chile, there's great steps for the construction sector that are coming along. And what I would like to flag, and we heard it from Brian Motherway, is this need for collaboration and dialogue. So there's a great working table on the national carbon footprint for Chile's construction sector. And as I'm sharing in that slide, the objective, of course, is to have a place so companies, organizations, academic, the public sector can develop a roadmap for the very high energy efficiency, the decarbonization of buildings, that we can collect data and understand operational carbon and also embodied emissions, which is another key thing in the sector. So I feel very encouraged about what's going on in the Chilean market. I really like this approach on the building's whole life cycle that is also being discussed. And we do know that in the nationally determined contribution for Chile, 17% of the decarbonization will come from green buildings, sustainable buildings, or why not net zero carbon buildings. So thank you very much. And I look forward to the panel discussion later.
Thank you very much, Christina, for a very motivating presentation, and one that really shows, including in this last picture, the how many people it really takes to make these changes happen, and then the positive message that we see them happening. So I'd like to now present our next speaker, Karol Gobczynski, who is head of climate and energy at INCA Group. And he's accountable at IKEA for establishing and implementing the overall climate and energy agenda for the company, which is really significant because, as I understand it, INCA Group has undertaken the goal to reduce more greenhouse gas emissions than it emits throughout its entire supply chain, which is quite a tall order. So, and I'll add as well that that in Karol's bio, he started his career working on integrating renewable energy and energy efficiency, which is also a really interesting intersection that we see and that we just saw Christina comment on. So Karol, thank you very much for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Before I will start, I would like to check just if you see my desktop correctly.
Yes, we see the first slide on full
Great.
screen.
Thank you so much. Good morning and good afternoon. Thank you, Edith, for the introduction and inviting me to share the energy efficiency role within the IKEA Climate Positive Commitment. So IKEA Climate Positive Commitment is a shared strategic initiative for all the companies working under IKEA brand. And what do we mean by climate positive? So we committed that by 2030, we will become climate positive by reducing more greenhouse gas emissions than the total value chain emits, while growing the IKEA business. And when we talk about whole value chain, it covers the emissions in downstream part, the supply chain, and upstream when it comes to including operations and related to product use at people's homes. When we focus on energy, we see that it has important role when it comes to reduction of the climate footprint within the different parts of emissions. So it is a driver when it comes to reducing climate footprint of materials footprint, because big part of that is energy used within the materials. It is connected to reducing the production footprint, as well as retail operations. So our stores, which are the most known for probably majority of you. Plus what we consider as well within our value chain footprint, it is as well the energy used by appliances and lighting solutions, which we offer to our customers. And so energy efficiency is one of the key drivers when it comes to drastically reducing the emissions while growing the business. The other areas are connected to carbon removal within the value chain without offsetting. And the third part, it's about going beyond. So it's enabling, for example, our customers to generate and consume renewable energy. And when we look on the different solutions and where energy efficiency is playing the role, one of the key areas is, as you saw on the piles, the product use at home. It's a significant part of our footprint because of the scale of the solutions and how many customers we are reaching. And already since 2016, we are offering only LED lighting within our range. And what is even more interesting that this LED lighting efficiency is constantly improving as well. So this is one of our roles when we are enabling our customers to reduce the energy consumption through the solutions we offer. And we see as well, based on the surveys, that our customers want to act. And today, 90% of the people would like to change the behavior and take actions to reduce the impact on the planet. Then beyond the energy efficient lighting, there is a part as well about promoting energy efficient appliances, as well as, for example, motion sensors, which are enabling to reduce further energy use at home. When we look on our retail part of operations, where Inca Group is responsible for bringing IKEA to the people on 30 markets today, energy efficiency, it is an integral part of the total our energy approach. We are investing in renewable energy generation offsite. We are offering home solar to our customers. We are working towards consuming 100% renewable electricity, transforming our buildings to consume only renewable heating and cooling by 2030, offering zero emission deliveries to our customers by 2025, and offering EV charging stations. And here, when we look on the energy efficiency, one part is of course connected to equipment and all the equipment which we use within the buildings. But as well, it is the interesting area is about heating and cooling, because by extracting the heating and cooling from the ground or from the air by using heat pumps, we are as well improving the energy efficiency of the building. The next area is connected to digitalization. And I think it was mentioned already before. And I would like just to stress it, that you cannot manage what you don't measure. And that's why digitalization is playing such an important role to understand and demystify around a bit energy, because for us and for many people at home, it's just something what is coming from the plug. But through the digitalization as well, people can understand much more where energy is coming from, how it's being consumed, and how different solutions or changes within the behavior are influencing the energy consumption and their energy bill at the end of the day. We, within the energy efficiency part, we've been focused a lot on technologies, and there are many great solutions. Where there are solutions as well to measure the energy, but we need to remember that key are people, to put people within the center of energy transition, and look how to improve the knowledge of your coworkers around energy efficiency, as well as empower the people with the knowledge within the organization. And talking from the experience, I've been working on energy efficiency within supply chain of IKEA as well in our operations. Very often people with highest knowledge on energy efficiency improvements maybe are not the loudest as well within the organization. So it's worth to look for them. And it is very much connected to the business. We conducted research and scenario analysis based on two scenarios, looking on the International Energy Agency scenario below 2 degrees. And we see that within some of the markets, the energy prices can increase, but by taking the right investments and investing in energy efficiency, in renewable energy generation, there are opportunities to avoid costs and reduce the cost, and even create this decarbonization brings the opportunity to develop a business through offering the solutions which are helping people to improve energy efficiency. From the other side, when we look on the 4-degree scenario, and currently we are on the 4-degree scenario globally, it's clear that the risks are much bigger and the cost of inaction is too high and more damaging for any business. And I will stop here and thank you very much.
Thank you, Karol. And I really like how energy efficiency is often thought of as something that's invisible, but your slides were very vivid And I think it's, I mean, we all are familiar, I think, with the IKEA brand and how the everything you would want in your home or office is visualized, but I think it's really interesting to see that applied to the concept of energy efficiency. So thank you for the excellent presentation.
Yeah. Thank you.
And I'd like now to present our last speaker, but certainly not least, Pascal Guillaume, who is the president of the European Federation of Intelligent Energy Efficiency Services, and who has devoted most of his career to the energy services sector. So has a really broad and deep understanding, and will present this, I think, an important supplement to the previous three presentations, and a very important perspective on energy efficiency. So Pascal, I'd like to hand the floor over to you.
Thank you, Edith. I'm very happy to be with you today to discuss with the other panelists and the floor energy efficiency, because as you probably have guessed from the name of our association, this is the very reason why we do exist as an association. I'd like to briefly introduce who we are and our members' activities and how this activity can contribute to improving energy efficiency wherever they operate. As you can see, our membership covers 12 member states, and we represent energy services companies, more commonly known under the acronym of ESCOs. We represent them either directly or through their national associations, and altogether, it's more than 100,000 professionals who day in, day out, work at driving down the carbon footprint and the energy consumption of their clients. So how do they deliver these improvements? It's a two-stage process. The first one is to design what we call an energy performance solution, which is a combination of concrete improvements in terms of technical energy assets, working on the building envelope, working on the operation on the optimum operation, and having done that, we implement and commission the investment. But I would say this is where it really begins for our members, because what we will do is manage the building, manage the premises to deliver the expected performance, and deliver this performance on the long run. And I'd like to maybe develop this notion of management and energy management. If you improve a building, if you invest on new equipments, you will certainly make a gap and an improvement on energy efficiency. But quite rapidly, this performance will get eroded, be it by less performing equipment or just increase in usage. This rebound effect, as it is known, is estimated by the UK Energy Research Centre at up to 30% of the expected savings. On the other hand, the Sustainable Building Observatory in France tells us that if you implement energy management of the equipment, but also users management, users coaching, you can generate anything between 10 to 30% of energy savings. So this really highlights the fact that energy management is the cornerstone of a sustainable improvement in energy efficiency. Because our members do manage the buildings, they can guarantee the results, and they back this guarantee with a financial commitment. As it has already been said, digital is increasingly present in our lives, but also in the buildings. So how can digital bring a contribution at energy efficiency, energy management, and how can it help us go further? What you see here is a concrete example of what we call an energy management platform. It's a platform that has been implemented by one of our members. There are other similar platforms existing. This one connects more than 40,000 buildings and collects 22 million data per day. coming from sensors, meters, and all these data are collected, processed, and then submitted to energy managers, experts, who work on the information that is provided to go further and define further improvement measures, to tackle any deviation, but also produce reporting and awareness material that can be used in users' coaching. So really, what I want to emphasize here is that human is at the center of this expertise, and that it doesn't stop there. The last component of this platform is the ability to act, and the technician on the ground will implement action. So it's from data to information, from information to decision, and then action. I have highlighted some of the benefits of the services. One that is very obvious is the fact that service providers do guarantee the performance, which is quite important if you have to invest on improvements. But what I would like also to highlight is the fact that these services are tailor-made. When it comes to energy efficiency, there is not a one-size-fits-all approach in terms of solution. Solutions are really bespoke solutions, bespoke in two regards. Obviously, in selecting the most cost-effective components for building your solution, but also to tailoring this solution to the characteristics of the building and to the characteristics of the customer or the user. It's obvious that you won't have the same needs for housing, for a hospital, or in an industrial production site. So this tailor-made approach is quite useful, because when you look at building stock, and if you try to rank them according to their energy performance, what you see is you have mainly three categories. On the left-hand side, the high-performing buildings, they are already close to nearly zero energy buildings, but as explained before, this is where really energy management and users and demand management has a strong value. On the right-hand side, you have the worst category of the buildings, the very dilapidated ones. And on those buildings, it's not only an issue of energy efficiency, energy cost, but it's also a question of well-being for people in the building. It's a question of ability to rent if it's a tertiary building, because your building is out of the market. So the investment cannot be covered by the energy savings, and this is where further support is needed. And last but not least, the third category, the average performance, you can build solutions where the improvements are covered by the energy savings on a time span that makes it reasonable. It's 6 to 10 years usually. And it's quite a large chunk of the energy consumption in a country. If you take the example of France, this represents more or less 2/3 of the energy consumption. So different situations, different solutions, but also different policies coming from awareness for the high-performing buildings to strong public support for the worst categories. And I will close my presentation with a concrete example that has been implemented by our Spanish member. It's a 12-year contract for 17 public buildings in Spain, where both energy efficiency and carbon footprint have been tackled. And savings range from 10% on the fuel to 25% in electricity. And these savings cover the full investment and is metered and measured, because, as Carol said, if you don't measure it, you don't manage it. And this finishes my presentation. Thank you, and I hand over the floor to you, Edith.
Thank you very much, Pascal, for again, a really interesting presentation, and really underlining both the importance of energy management. Technology will only get us so far. And also, I think this point of the tailored solutions, the fact that in fact you need different solutions for different clients, for different buildings, is very important. So we have a number of excellent questions from our audience. And so I think I'm just going to launch into those questions. And since Paulo is up on the screen, I'll ask you first, but I'm actually directing this question at everybody, but let's start with Paulo. And the question is whether you can explain a bit more about the key incentives for companies to invest in energy efficiency.
Yes, I believe that the key incentive to invest in energy efficiency, it is the consumers itself. For the members of the association, consumer is king. And whatever the consumer needs, members are developing and delivering. So to me, the key investment recipient in terms of energy efficiency is not necessarily companies. To me, the most relevant recipient for incentives, it's actually consumers. And here we are at the crossroad between consumer behavior, technology, and legislation. Technology is here. We heard from Brian that actually using the available best product today and simply bringing them to consumer home, we could double the energy efficiency of the installed stock. That is where I think money should go.
Thank you, Paulo. So I'll direct it now to, I'm just going across the screen. So I'll direct it to Carol next. Actually, the same question. So I mean, Inca Group has a very clear corporate strategy and that supports efficiency and decarbonization. So what's your incentive, and how much of it is policy and how much of it is driven by just pure financial considerations?
Yeah. I think, first of all, I would start even with something different. It's a company culture and the vision. And IKEA vision is to create better everyday life for the many people. And climate change is the biggest threat at the same when we look globally, when it comes to how many people can be pushed towards the lower income. And looking on from our values perspective, that was already years ago when we launched the first People and Planet Positive strategy. Then we revised it, looking on what are the issues that society is facing as well. Because if the society is facing the issues, of course, business will need to adjust to offer based on the needs. And it's great to see now, we see gradual increase of the customer interest. And as I said, within the survey that we are running on the 30 markets, we see 90% of people are standing, they would like to change behavior. What is the main issue that they are not taking action is like they don't see sufficient support from the companies and government to implement or take these steps. And this is what we see. If we would like to be as a future-proof business, we need to be part of the solution for the people. And that's why we need, it was already decided, as I said, from 2016, we are not offering different kind of lighting, which is helping people not only to reduce the negative impact, but as well reduce the cost of it. And when the decision was taken, the LED lighting was more expensive, around 10 times what it is today, what we offer. And I think this is what you can drive with the scale as well, and the business has a responsibility. Of course, as you saw it on the graph of the value chain emissions, it's on every stage of your business that you need to integrate energy efficiency. So you need to secure that people within the different parts of organization are working with this topic. So, but I would say definitely like the values of the business, what you stand for as a business, then there's the other part, of course, you need to be prepared to serve your customers. And then you need to look, how do you bring this in the most profitable way?
Thank you. So Christina, I'd like to turn to you now with the same question, but also kind of reminding the audience that, I mean, you, first of all, buildings are extremely complex, and it's very difficult to accomplish what you've accomplished. And it's largely, I mean, part of the reason is that buildings are a local issue fundamentally. And so you're dealing with different jurisdictions, with different legal systems. So, I mean, what are you able to summarize even, you know, to synthesize what you would see as the key drivers, both from a policy perspective, but also more broadly for energy efficiency in buildings and for a drive to net zero, which I know you're emphasizing quite a bit.
Yes, thank you for that. Yes, I guess, and yeah, building also on what Carol said, it's about leadership here. Because if we focus on the problems and not on the solutions, we will get stuck in the fragmented value chain in a very conservative sector where the decisions made, who reaps the benefit, of the investments, all that. So from the World Green Building Council Network perspective, what I lead is, let's say, visionary leadership. And so that net zero carbon buildings commitment that we have has 110 signatories, including 28 cities that are enabled by national governments having facilitating policies or good vision of urban environments, or that have committed, for example, to net zero. So they enable cities to take a leadership position. And we should remember that many cities around the world are calling for net zero goals or carbon neutral goals in their horizons. And so building on that, and with the GBCs that understand their local context, the difficulties, the priorities, of course, developed countries, with those common principles that are non-negotiable around the world, we generate locally relevant solutions. And so that's why I was showing that graph of different solutions for different markets and how that has come across. And the good thing is that the sustainable investment movement is really asking us, how do we have a conversation on metrics and operational savings, energy efficiency, carbon? So a sector that had problems with metrics is finding solutions on how to have a conversation to disclose that these assets are the best assets out there. And for a policy perspective, of course, we just did World Green Building Week last week, and we had events, 300 events in over 45 countries around advancing net zero carbon buildings. And what we saw is a call for governments to have more bold and ambitious regulation, because the truth is that only 30% of the world has performance-based goals. So if we wait for policy, we will be behind in delivering what motivates us, and it's being in line with the climate science, supporting the leaders, and if you like, Edith, it's about creating demand. And so we create demand, we create opportunity, and companies and cities that are leaders get behind that, and we start seeing that we build momentum, as we did with green buildings a decade ago, and we are aiming at the same thing, aiming high to deliver momentum to true very high energy efficiency, and the unlocking power of all this road to COP26 and better commitments that will unlock the hooks for cities to have better regulation too.
Thanks a lot. And I think this theme, I'm seeing a thread here of getting ahead of policy as well, there's an important role to be proactive here. So Pascal, I'm going to ask you the same question, but I'll add another layer because I see another question that's related. So, I mean, it would be really interesting to hear about what drives your clients or the constituencies, the buildings themselves, to sign up for these energy performance contracts. And relatedly, do you see energy audits as playing an important role in driving the motivation to undertake energy efficiency measures and energy management in buildings?
First, I think the price issue is a significant component of the decision-making process. So what we do is really try to engineer solutions that have a return that is matching our clients' horizon. Obviously, talking about return and pricing, this calls for maybe an explanation. We are currently facing times where energy prices are very, very low. It makes it a bit more complicated to balance between investment that are sometimes quite significant and the savings that are generated. And what is also coming into play is the fact that carbon has a cost, but carbon doesn't always have a price. So when we discuss about policies, what we strongly support is the fact that the externalities that are coming with fossil fuel and carbon content should be also reflected in the price of these products. So we have seen in a few countries a carbon tax playing this role of tipping the balance to help people go in the right direction. So this price stimulus is definitely important. Then back to what I explained in terms of different categories of buildings. Obviously, policies have to play two roles. The first one is applying pressure, and this pressure can be regulation. It can be, as I mentioned, fiscal signals like a carbon tax. But then, in complement to those signals, you should have also support, and this support aims at two kind of categories. People who adopt the right behavior and are moving in the right direction, the best practices adopters, but also the low-income households, because there is a social problem that is combined with that. So coming back to your question, what motivates our clients, it's a combination of economics and also the fact that they want to improve their carbon footprint. So they want to do the right thing. So we need to help them find the right balance.
Thank you. And I'm glad that you brought up this issue of pricing, because it can be a very sensitive one, but it's a very important one. So I'd like to direct the next question to Christina, and it's a question about how we can promote energy efficiency in the public sector. And I wonder if you have any tips. And I'd ask you to keep the response relatively short. We have about 7 minutes left, so I think we can get through a few more questions. Thanks.
Yes, sure. Yeah. Well, just as I was getting ready for this webinar, for example, in the energy efficiency regulation that Chile is about to enact, it's walking the talk. So it's on government procurement, for example. That's one of the lowest hanging fruits. Government has full control of that, and government procurement and delivering energy efficiency and ESCO agreements and renovating public buildings is the way to go, because you create the market and you create the right signals for the rest of the policies to follow, including the ones in affordable housing.
Yeah, thank you. So the next question I'll direct at Paulo first, and then see if anybody else wants to comment. But there's a question about how we handle the waste from appliances and from solar panels, and how you and how Aplia views this. So it's a bit of inserting a bit of a circular economy perspective into the discussion as well.
Yes, definitely. Waste is actually a resource. And we did our own assessment of what does happen to the waste of electrical and electronic equipments coming from our own sector. And we understood that 95% of it becomes secondary raw material. So waste is actually the second best opportunity, I would say, after energy efficiency, in order to make sure that all appliances that are placed on the market, they do their job for as long as it is possible. Then they come back to collective schemes, and they are actually reinserted into a virtuous loop.
And can you explain sort of what the driver is of doing that? Because we know that this doesn't happen everywhere. So
Definitely.
Can you give us one good example?
It is actually this another excellent example of how legislation could help in shaping a market that actually didn't even exist before. So the first WEEE, 2006, was instrumental into giving to manufacturer the responsibility of handling the waste. Manufacturers organized into collective schemes that are responsible for their market share. So they go and collect from municipalities. That is also an excellent example of where everybody has to do something. So municipalities would have to create actually places where consumers could bring their electronic waste. From there on, it is the responsibility of manufacturers to make sure that waste is treated according to the stricter environmental standards. That's another key asset of our industry, I have to say. There is not a single gram of greenhouse gases emission that is lost from recycling fridges through the collective schemes. So it's a role of legislation, of municipalities, of manufacturers, all together.
Thank you. So I'm going to turn, we're running short on time. So there's a question that I think makes for a good closing question, and I'll open it up and see whether anybody wants to take it first. And again, if you can keep your response short, we can get through 4 responses, I think. And the question is, how do you scale these experiences, which are promoted in large markets in the context of a country like Chile? So it's quite a broad question, but if you can give us some tips on scale. I'll let Carol go first because Paulo just spoke, and then we'll go to you. Carol, please.
Yeah, I think first we need to amplify really good as well solutions, and we need first movers who will be followed as well. And we just announced yesterday that we'll phase out all the single-use batteries from our stores, and we'll just offer rechargeable batteries. This is one of it's important step towards where we can actually come across the customers who are saying clearly, we don't want to be wasteful. We would like to have positive impact on the planet. And these are the solutions how we can enable. And I think that's something what we need to bring more as well, and amplify the good examples and the way forward. And this connection between the customer needs, business, and public sector.
Thank you. Paulo, you had your hand up, and then I'll turn to the others.
Yes, to me, Chile is on a very, very positive path. They are enabling energy efficiency and energy labeling mandatory schemes. So they're doing extremely well. I would just work on helping consumers to take the advantage of the latest technologies through exploring possible incentives and tax reductions to foster the introduction of energy efficiency appliances. Thank you.
Thank you. Pascal.
Okay. I already mentioned this tax and fiscal incentives as Paulo said. Maybe another one that would probably, as always, help the market take off is really exemplarity in public buildings, whether local or national. I think really paving the way for private actors and showing the way. The leadership in the public sector is always important, all the more that it's success and exemplary solutions that drive the adoption and the awareness in the market. And coupled with corporate responsibility, I think this is the way to have the market take off.
Thank you. And Christina, you have the last word of our panel.
Oh, dear me. I would say it would be about keeping the ambition loop, the radical collaboration. In the ambition loop, I say strong private leadership, right? That shows a vision of the possible. We have a great example here, for example, from IKEA. Then the public sector also showing that they're up to the conversation and leading also the way through networking, like we're doing today internationally, learning from best practice, leapfrogging, and not being afraid to make a mistake here and then. The return on investment here is the risk of inaction. The ROI here, we do not have time to just go back to how we were before and really embrace the possibilities of a sustainable recovery.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone. It's been a real pleasure, and I think this has been a very interesting discussion. If we were here in person, I would say let's continue it over drinks, but unfortunately, we're having this remotely today, so that will have to wait. But thank you very much, and handing back over to you, Federico.
Many thanks, Edith, and also many thanks to all the panelists for sharing their view and with the audience, and this interesting perspective of energy efficiency. Now we will take a really short break to refill our cups and to allow the technician to set the cameras for the second part of the conference. I invite you all to see this short video on the role of energy efficiency in the global energy transition, which will introduce our next speech. I'll see you back here in 3 minutes sharp.
A nivel mundial, la eficiencia energética es una de las áreas de acción más importantes para avanzar en la transición energética. Es un as bajo la manga para alcanzar los objetivos de desarrollo sostenible y de la A nivel mundial, la eficiencia energética es una de las áreas de acción más importantes para avanzar en la transición energética. Es un as bajo la manga para alcanzar los objetivos de desarrollo sostenible y del Acuerdo de París.
Bienvenidos de vuelta a la Conferencia Internacional Eficiencia Energética, un as bajo la manga para la transición energética.
Welcome back to the conference on energy efficiency, an ace up the sleeve for energy transitions. I hope you had time to make the most of the break. And now we're going to talk about public policies that the Ministry of Energy is implementing to promote promote energy efficiency in different sectors. And I'm going to call on Gabriel Prudencio, Head of Division of Sustainable Energy at the Ministry of Energy of Chile. Gabriel? Do you have your camera on? Welcome. Welcome for being here. And I'm going to give you the floor straight away for your presentation. And remember to unmute yourself before you start speaking. Thank you very much. I'm going to share my presentation. Just give me a few seconds.
Agradecería me puedas confirmar, entiendo que ahí se ve.
Can you confirm that you can see the presentation? Yes, absolutely, you can see it. So, we're listening to you. Yes, thank you very much. I'd also like to thank the International Energy Agency for co-hosting this event, as well as all those who have supported this initiative and the public for being here with us. In the next minutes, I'm going to tell you a little about energy efficiency in Chile, what we're planning, and I'm going to try to explain how we consume energy in our country. There are three main forms of energy consumption in our country. This is what you can see here on the pie chart. 39% is industry and mining. A little more than a third is consumed by transport, and about a quarter is the residential sector. Also, about 40% of our consumption is either cooling or heating, and 22% is accounted for by electricity. I'd like to show you the position of Chile. You can see on the vertical axis the consumption per capita. You can see that we're slightly above the world average, slightly above the average of the countries in the region, but under the energy consumption per capita of the OECD. And if we look at the GDP per capita, this is what you see on the horizontal axis, you can see that when there's more growth per capita, normally that leads to more energy consumption. And this is something that we can also see here. You can see here the past 50 years, and you can see the blue GDP curve with a 5-fold increase and a 4-fold increase in energy consumption. So you can see that the two curves go up together, but it's not always the case though. And in the OECD countries, GDP has been increased 3-fold, but energy consumption has only increased by 45%. It's what you can see on the right. And so energy efficiency can really be a key in the uncoupling of GDP growth and energy consumption growth. And this has huge benefits, environmental, obviously, but also social and political. In Chile, for about 10 years now, we've been working on this theme of energy efficiency, and here we're highlighting some initiatives, for example, promoting productive sectors with training as well, monitoring, co-financing of projects, the label of energy excellence that is granted to companies, and also the buildings, more than 140 buildings that have been fully renovated, 3,000 civil servants that have undergone training, improvement of schools in terms of energy efficiency, and then also educational programs from primary education to higher education. And we've also organized workshops for ordinary citizens, and we prepared 295,000 efficiency kits for families. We already have a label, which is what you can see here, for 28 artifacts, and it represents 80% of household consumption. We have a label also for new vehicles, lightweight and medium-weight vehicles, and also an energy certification label for buildings. As for energy efficiency, we have this for fridges, for air conditioning, for indoor lighting, for engines, And in the construction sector, we also have minimum standards that are now being updated so that they can be even more stringent. So we've made a lot of headway, and no doubt there's still a lot to do, many opportunities that we can exploit, and therefore we presented in 2018 a bill of law with 4 different parts. First of all, institutionalizing energy efficiency. So through this law, there'll be a national plan for energy efficiency. This national plan will be drafted in a participatory way under the Ministry for Sustainability, and it will be updated every 5 years. For the big consumers, the bill of law will require implementation of energy efficiency systems. So the 300 biggest companies will have to implement a strategy, and this will help us seize opportunities to improve energy consumption in companies and ensure that we have lower emissions. And then this new law also has a program to give labels for buildings, be they residential or other sorts of buildings. And the building sector will have to provide information to the consumers who are going to buy flats or other forms of premises. And then for the vehicles, there will also be standards of energy efficiency for light vehicles, middle vehicles, and heavyweight vehicles. We also have a number of other issues that come under this law, for example, the management of energy in the public sector, the interoperability of electric vehicles, the accelerated depreciation for electric vehicles, and also promotion of hydrogen. And I didn't say this, but this bill of law is now at the final stage, and we hope that it will be adopted very soon. And we're quite sure that this is going to generate huge benefits. And of course, we will follow closely any amendment presented in the Congress. Now, there's another theme, or 2 other themes that have already been broached on during this seminar. We have this picture here that shows how the world is really in difficulty because of the virus, the pandemic that has affected us all. But we also know that if we work together in a coordinated fashion, if we're united, we can overcome the problems that humanity faces. We haven't yet overcome the pandemic, but we've made progress. And here we have, of course, the economic fallout from the pandemic. And Brian said that energy efficiency is going to become even more important in the context of the economic recovery. And then, of course, there's the other giant that we can see here, climate change. And we definitely have to work hand in hand to try to mitigate climate change that will affect the most vulnerable, as we all know. So we are committed to achieve carbon neutrality in 2050, and we have an action plan with 4 different streams. The phase out of coal power plants, efficient energy, developing hydrogen, and using electric vehicles for mobility. And here we can see the 4 different themes. We can see that it's energy efficiency that's going to help us reduce our emissions and become carbon neutral. We know that carbon neutrality has positive aspects. $40 billion in saving And so that is money that we can use for the investments that we need. I'd like to finish my presentation showing the many benefits of energy efficiency. We're not doing this for the environment, although it would be a sufficient reason, of course. But the benefits of energy efficiency go far beyond the environment. There's a reduction in costs, for example, for companies and households. It improves competitiveness, it creates jobs, and there are many other, of course, benefits, environmental benefits that have already been mentioned. So this is just to say that at the end of the day, we all need to work together. We're doing this work at the ministry, but the opportunities are there, they're out there. And so ordinary citizens, companies, we can all seize these opportunities. And so in this way, we know that we have this ace up the sleeve that we can use for energy transition for the benefit of all. Thank you very much. Thank you, Gabriel. A very interesting presentation indeed. And you referred to the title of this international conference, the Ace Up the Sleeve. And the Ministry of Energy of Chile has, of course, very ambitious plans, as we've already seen. And now we're going to move on to the second panel for this conference. We're going to have now more of a regional perspective, and we're going to cover different areas, public policy, as well as the vision of the private sector. And what's really interesting is that we're going to talk about the role of banks in funding projects. In this panel, we'll have a number of recognized experts, and it's Virginia Talacat is going to moderate. She's a member of the Agency for Sustainable Energy, and she has a diploma in energy efficiency from the Pontifical University of Chile. So welcome, Virginia. Thank you very much for being with us. I'm going to hand over to you straight away so that you can moderate this panel and introduce the panelists. And please remember to switch on your mic. Thank you very much, Federico. Good morning, good afternoon to you all. Thank you very much for enabling me to moderate this very interesting panel. We are, thanks to energy efficiency, go towards a clean transition. This involves many benefits, and it involves everyone: finance, education, health, industry, transport. With the pandemic, we believe that CO2 emissions are going to fall by 8% in 2020, but our challenge is to avoid a bounce back in emissions after the pandemic, and this is why we need to continue working on energy efficiency in the economic recovery. Also, as we heard in this seminar, Chile is a bold country regarding energy efficiency because we took some important measures. For example, the labeling of energy efficiency in vehicles. We were the first country to do so in Latin America. We've also been leaders in electromobility. We're really using all the potential in terms of sun and wind energy, and we have huge potential there. We're preparing a strategy for hydrogen and also for decarbonation. And we see that there are many opportunities, and every time we can opportunity, we seize it. The public sector has made huge strides. We have the parameters for the evaluation of energy use in hospitals, in schools, the MEPs, the strategy for firewood, but there's still much to do. We have to really use our imagination to bring down barriers that make it hard for energy efficiency to be carried out. And so in this way, we'll be able to seize the opportunities of energy efficiency. This panel is going to talk about the policies in Chile and in Latin America to achieve energy efficiency and seize opportunities. We also want to talk about the drivers that could promote energy efficiency, including investment and new opportunities after the pandemic. We'll have 4 distinguished panelists who are going to each make a brief presentation, and after we'll have a conversation on energy efficiency in Chile and in our region, and then we'll have a few minutes for questions from the audience. Our first panelist is Ignacio Santelice, Executive Director of the Energy Efficiency Agency. Ignacio is an economist. He has a diploma from Berkeley, California, and the Pontifical University of Chile. He's a specialist of public policy implementation, mitigation of climate change, and has also taught in many universities. So, Ignacio, you have the floor, and remember to switch on your microphone.
Muchas gracias, Virginia.
Thank you very much, Virginia.
A todos, a todas.
Good morning, good afternoon
Voy a
to you all.
proyectar mi presentación.
I'm going to share my presentation.
Bueno, espero que se está viendo.
I hope you can see it.
Bueno, hoy día quiero hablar, o nos pidieron conversar sobre la reactivación sostenible. La discusión es si es posible tener una reactivación sostenible. Se habla mucho de la reactivación sostenible, pero veamos los fundamentos de esta y si efectivamente podemos llevarla adelante. Ya esto, Gabriel mostró un gráfico bien parecido, un dibujo bien parecido a este, que no me voy a detener mucho, pero lo importante aquí, todos sabemos que el cambio climático llevan décadas los científicos hablando sobre los efectos que va a tener en nuestra economía, en nuestro estilo de vida, en nuestra calidad de vida, el cambio climático, los impactos en el medio ambiente, y aún así no hemos hecho nada. Yo creo que hemos hecho muchas cosas, pero todavía no hemos hecho suficiente. ¿Y por qué? Porque yo creo que en el inconsciente nuestro no estamos tomando muy en serio los riesgos del cambio climático. Yo creo que no hemos sido capaces de darnos cuenta de que efectivamente el cambio climático puede afectarnos de manera muy concreta y muy real a todos y cada uno de nosotros. Y yo lo que espero de esta pandemia es que saquemos un poco de una lección de humildad y que nos demos cuenta de que fenómenos de la naturaleza, como puede ser un virus, puede trastocar completamente nuestra economía, trastocar completamente nuestro estilo de vida, y eso varias veces peor es lo que va a pasar con el cambio climático. Así que espero que tomemos buena conciencia de esto y que entonces nos queramos hacer a partir de la reactivación económica y en adelante cargo de los grandes desafíos que va a tener el cambio climático. Ahora, cuando hablamos de recuperación sostenible, ¿qué elementos son críticos para esto? Bueno, primero, que sea un buen negocio, que sea económicamente rentable. Si vamos a reactivar la economía, tiene que ser con buenas medidas. Segundo, que cree empleo. En Chile tenemos hoy día, salió la estadística ayer, ¿cierto? 13% de desempleo y fluctuando, puede llegar hasta el 20, ha llegado hasta el 20, entonces tenemos que crear empleos. Necesitamos empezar, como decíamos, a hacernos cargo del cambio climático, necesitamos reducir las emisiones de gases de efecto invernadero y también de material particulado, que es un problema muy serio en todo el centro-sur del país. Y finalmente, y esta es una variable adicional que probablemente es más para países en desarrollo que para países desarrollados, que no comprometa significativamente el gasto público. Hoy día, parte muy importante del gasto público se está destinando a ayuda social a personas que quedaron sin empleo, personas que quedaron en situaciones muy vulnerables, y tenemos que ver cómo podemos ingeniárnoslas para reactivar la economía sin comprometer demasiado los recursos públicos. Y entonces vamos abordando rápido todos estos temas, a ver si la sostenibilidad cumple con esto. Primero, ¿es buen negocio la sostenibilidad? Bueno, yo creo que claramente sí. Ahí vemos en el gráfico de la derecha los paybacks de distintas soluciones de eficiencia energética, de energías renovables, y vemos cómo los paybacks son bastante bajos, bastante razonables. Toda la inversión que ha hecho el mundo desarrollado, Alemania, en invertir en tecnologías eficientes y bajar los costos, hoy día ha dado frutos y hoy día todas estas tecnologías eficientes son probablemente las cosas más competitivas. ¿Cuál es el problema que tenemos? El problema que tenemos es un problema de inversión versus operación. Aquí los que hayan tomado algún curso de microeconomía siempre daban el ejemplo de las impresoras, de cómo las empresas te vendían una impresora barata y después te obligaban a comprar un toner caro. Es decir, la operación era muy cara y te enganchaban con la impresora barata. Bueno, nos encanta comprar impresora barata.
we all
Nos
love to
encanta hacer la
buy
inversión
cheap
más barata posible
investments,
y no nos
cheap
preocupamos de cuánto nos va a
printers.
costar
We like to
operar esa
invest
inversión. Y ahí
as
está
cheap as
justamente el
possible,
problema de
but then
sostenibilidad.
we do
Cuando
not
tengamos una
have a
visión del
long-term
ciclo de
view,
vida, una visión de
and
más
it's
largo
important to
plazo,
have a
vamos a poder
longer-term
ser
vision,
más sostenibles.
understanding the
Cuando uno
life
mira
cycle
los
of the
paybacks de estos
products,
proyectos,
because if you
cómo no
see
van a
the
ser
payback of
rentables
the
si
different
finalmente la
projects,
inversión se recupera en
they are
torno a un
obviously
tercio
quite
de la
cost
vida útil del
efficient,
producto.
because
Y de ahí en adelante,
in the
2 tercios de la
first
vida
3
útil
years,
nos sale
you
prácticamente
start
gratis. Es decir, con
to
pagar
have a
2 veces la inversión
5%
con
annual
los ahorros que nos van a
saving.
generar este tipo de
So
medidas.
you pay the investment with the savings that you are
Bueno,
getting from
y
that
bajando un poco más a lo
investment.
concreto, ¿qué es lo que podemos
Let's
hacer para reactivar nuestra
see it
economía en
in
forma
more
sostenible?
specific
Ya se dijo en el
terms.
primer
What can we
bloque,
do to boost
probablemente las medidas que son
economic
más
recovery
eficientes para
through
esto tienen
energy
que ver
efficiency? Well, the
con
most
la
efficient
edificación,
measures
con
are
el
related to
reacondicionamiento de viviendas.
buildings
Darles un
and
ejemplo, el programa de eficiencia
renovation of
energética en hospitales que
buildings.
se llevó a cabo
Let's
hace
see
algunos
an
años desde la
example. There is a
agencia.
program that was
Ahí
carried
vemos
out in
cómo por cada
hospitals
100 millones de pesos
by
que
our
se
agency,
invertían
and you can see that
en cambiar calderas, cambiar sistema de clima en los hospitales,
investing
se
in the
generaban ahorros de en
replacement
torno a
of
50 millones
heaters
anuales.
and
Es decir,
other
en 2
equipment
años se pagaba la inversión. Y
was
cuando uno mira esto dice,
being
bueno, ¿cuánto
recovered. The
dinero hemos
investment was
estado
recovered
perdiendo
in
desde
2
el
years.
Estado
So if you think
usando
about
maquinarias
it,
ineficientes?
we have
¿Ah?
been
¿Y
losing
cómo se
money
financia esto?
because
Porque
we
dijimos,
didn't
bueno, no
invest
comprometamos
in
mucho el gasto público. Hay
renewable
modelos de
or
financiamiento como
efficiency,
el modelo ESCO, en
energy
que los
efficient
privados hacen las inversiones
equipments.
y después se
Private
recupera la
market many
inversión a
times
partir
invests, and
de
then
los ahorros
the
que se generan,
investment
lo
is
que
paid
permite al
back
Estado liberar
through savings.
el uso
And
de recursos públicos
in the end,
y
the
solamente
state
beneficiarse, ¿cierto?, de
is
los ahorros
able
que se van
to
generando. Y el potencial es
unlock
enorme. Hoy día tenemos más de
much more
4.000 edificios
funds, and
públicos en
now
el
we
gobierno
have
central.
a huge
Tenemos más de
potential.
10.000 escuelas y
Actually, we have
jardines infantiles, tenemos miles de centros de salud,
public
edificios municipales,
buildings from the
etcétera.
central
Y
government,
nuestra estimación a
more
partir de
than
nuestra experiencia
10,000
es que cada uno
schools
de
and
estos proyectos podría
kindergartens,
generar
health
más de 10
centers,
empleos anuales,
municipal
sin
buildings,
gastar un
etc.
peso de inversión pública,
So
reduciendo el gasto público,
this
generando
kind
empleos
of
y
measures
moviendo la
would
actividad
create
económica.
jobs, would
Ahí vemos algunos ejemplos.
boost economy. Excuse me, Ignacio, to interrupt your very interesting presentation. And also, Virginia, please excuse me, but they are telling me that you should change your settings and to switch off, because you're probably on English, and now we're having some issues, technical issues with that. Okay, thank you.
Espero que no me cuenten este tiempo.
Well, I hope this is not counting as my own speaking time.
No, pero lo tenía puesto en off.
Ok, entonces si está en off, déjalo en off, así tal cual como está.
Ok, if it's off.
Voy a retomar entonces muy rápidamente. Aquí lo vemos, la eficiencia energética no es solo reducción de gastos, es mejor calidad de vida. Cuando intervenimos una escuela, bajamos sus niveles de CO2, subimos la temperatura ambiente, bajamos el ruido. Por ejemplo, aquí tenemos a la izquierda el ejemplo del hospital de Valdivia. Era el mayor emisor de material particulado de la comuna, una comuna con problemas serios de contaminación, y el hospital era el principal emisor. Cambiamos una caldera a carbón por un sistema de gas eficiente y vemos los resultados fantásticos, mucho mejor calidad de vida, mucho mejor resultado, mucho ahorro energético. Y lo segundo es, bueno, tenemos 6 millones de edificaciones privadas en Chile.
Now let's move to the private
¿Cómo no
sector.
vamos
We
a
have
ser capaces
6
de avanzar en
million
mejorar la
private
eficiencia de
buildings
todas
in
estas
Chile.
viviendas? 2 tercios de todos estos
Obviously,
espacios
there
fueron
is a
construidos antes
huge
del año
potential
2000,
here.
sin ningún tipo
All
de
those
estándar de
buildings were
eficiencia
built
energética.
before
Una vivienda de ese
2000
tipo cambia su
without
aire
any kind of
cada 20 minutos.
eco
Imagínense lo
standard,
difícil que es
environmental
mantener un
standard.
sistema climatizado dentro de una vivienda de ese tipo. ¿Cómo podemos
Imagine
financiarlo?
all the
Bueno, hay
possibilities
modelos
that we have
interesantes en
there
otras partes. En
in the
Estados Unidos
heating
tienen
and
un programa
ventilation, for example.
en que
How
el
do we do
retrofit,
that?
la incorporación de medidas de eficiencia
fund
energética que
this?
mejoran
Well,
la
there's a program
edificación,
pays now,
se pagan o se incluyen dentro del gasto de los
and
impuestos a la
the
propiedad, dentro de las
structure, the
contribuciones.
scheme is related
¿Y cuál es la
to
gracia de eso?
the
Que la deuda no queda para la persona, queda para la
structure of
propiedad,
the
lo que
debt
mejora
that is not
mucho
linked to
los
the
índices de
property but to the
repago
owner.
y además
So it
permite que si la persona
helps
se va, bueno, la deuda queda en la
hugely
vivienda. Entonces,
to repay,
ahí hay
because if
tremendas
the
opciones
person
también
moves,
para
decides to
avanzar
sell
en
or
eficiencia energética y qué
to
potencial
leave
tiene
the building,
enorme.
it is
hay más de
just
2 millones de
taken by the
edificaciones que
next
pagan
owner of
contribuciones.
that
3/4 de
building.
esas son viviendas.
On
Y
the
un
other
proyecto de este
hand,
tipo puede generar en torno a 0,2 empleos anuales.
there's
En
the
caso de
potential
viviendas,
for
entre
the
5 a 10.
creation of
En
jobs.
otras edificaciones,
They
por
can
lo que
create
también
0.2
es tremenda la oportunidad para
jobs
generar
per
empleo.
year
Y
per
también, de
building,
nuevo, esto
and
se paga
5 to
solo.
10
Cuando se mete dentro de las
jobs in
contribuciones,
other kind of
cuando se paga
buildings.
a 20 años la inversión,
Then if you think
finalmente se va cubriendo con los ahorros
about
que se generan.
a
Y
20-year
quiero cerrar diciendo, bueno, hay otras medidas que hoy día se están
payment
implementando y que es
scheme, you can
importante
see that
seguir
it is
potenciando.
very smart.
Aprobemos
Now,
pronto la ley de eficiencia energética, como
let
dijo
me
Gabriel,
move
está en su
to
última
the
etapa, podría salir dentro de este mes del
the
Congreso.
bill of law,
Potenciemos el desarrollo de las
energy
energías
efficiency law
renovables.
that will be
¿Cómo lo hacemos? Bueno,
passed
generemos un
soon.
ambiente propicio para la inversión.
We
Y
need to
segundo,
focus
avancemos en la
on
electrificación
boosting
del
the
consumo
development
energético,
of
el
renewable
transporte, los
energies in the
hogares, las
electric
industrias.
sector to
Tercero,
create
tenemos una tremenda oportunidad
social
como país
and
con el hidrógeno
political
verde.
stability.
Trabajemos en eso y también
Also, we have to
apoyemos a las
develop
pequeñas
the
y medianas
green
empresas para mejorar su
hydrogen
productividad,
sector
incorporando
and to
medidas de eficiencia
support
energética
small and medium
y energías
enterprises
renovables. Entonces, volviendo a la pregunta
for
inicial,
them
¿es
to
posible la
invest
reacción
in renewable
sostenible?
energy. So
Sí,
to
es posible,
reply again to the
pero
question,
requiere
is it
compromiso,
possible to
requiere
have
un
a
compromiso
sustainable
más allá del
economic
compromiso
reactivation?
sectorial que
Yes, indeed,
sabemos que está
but
presente.
it is necessary
Necesitamos que se tomen
that it
medidas a
comes
nivel
along
nacional y
with
que se
a
involucren a todos los
commitment
actores y sea un
involving
compromiso
all the
país.
different
Muchas
economic
gracias,
actors
Virginia. Muchas gracias a
in
todos.
the country. Thank you, Virginia. Thank you all. Thank you, Ignacio, for such an interesting presentation on what the agency is doing. Let me move to the following speaker, Janet Sanchez, Director of the Natural Resources Division of the ICLAC in Chile. She is also a doctor from the Barcelona University. She's a master in community planning by the University of Texas, economist in the Ecuador University. She's a former minister of the Inclusion Ministry, the social development industry in Ecuador between 2007 and 2013. Janet, you have the floor. Hello, thank you, Virginia. Thank you for the invitation. Greetings to all the panelists that are here today. And I have a presentation that I would like to share with you on the screen that I believe is going to be quite complementary to the one made by Ignacio. My presentation is more regional oriented. And to begin with, I would like to say that our region historically has been the one with a lesser energy intensity at a global level, but also it has been the one that has improved the least. If we compare ourselves with other regions, the European Union or China, for example, the Latin America and the Caribbean, that is shown in the graphic, is been quite stable in the last 30, 40 years. Obviously, there are differences between countries. There are countries that have reached higher energy efficiency, as Costa Rica, for example, or Uruguay, Panama, just to mention a few. Then we have Brazil and Chile that would be like in the average rate, and those with less satisfactory results, Bolivia, Paraguay, for example. ICLAC has supported the region, has been supporting the region for more than 10 years regarding energy efficiency, and we have identified as one of the most important topics to develop energy efficiency policies is that it is necessary to have access to information and to strong institutions in order to make sound decisions. This is why ICLAC launched a very ambitious project that has been going on for a number of years, and it was based in the development of a set of energy efficiency indicators that would take into account the situation in the different countries of the region. So now we have 16 national reports describing energy efficiency policies and trends. There are two regional reports and four for regarding the Caribbean. There is an internet database for the period going through 2000 to 2016, containing around 80 indicators of energy efficiency in 14 countries. It has been time-consuming. It's been a great effort. And we started this project in Chile, if you remember, with the support of the different institutions that work in energy, and later on other countries joined us or joined the project. We do have now a database that I would like to share with you. You can access to it. It is open for you to use, and we can do searches and select the indicators we are interested in and see what is the situation in the different countries. It's democratically built database, and we have faced a number of challenges, and this is why we have structured our job around four main activities. To begin with, to update and to broaden the indicators of the database until 2018, to set a EE policy database for the LAC region, to assess the impact of such policies with indicators, and to conclude also capacity building in order to consolidate the work that we have done. And this is something we do through trainings and workshops in the countries. There is also a space that we created to promote dialogue, and I am referring to the Regional Observatory on Sustainable Energies that is meant to act as a debate platform, as a dialogue platform. And it is structured around four axes. First of all, the indicators I just mentioned, the energy efficiency BIEE, also ECOSUD on the energy integration and complementarity. There are different forums that are organized throughout the years. And there is a technical regional forum for energy planners and the regional policy dialogue that I mentioned as a very important trait of our structure. Thank you, Virginia. Thank you, Janet. It was a very interesting presentation on the experience of the ICLAC and the steps taken till now. I will give the floor now to José Antonio Urteaga, Senior Specialist on Energy at the IDB. He's an economist by the Mexico University. He studied in Argentina specifically on energy, and also at the Polytechnical Institute in Mexico. He has 45 years of experience in renewable energy and climate change, amongst other things, and he's responsible of the IDB activities or operations in Mexico, and has also an experience regarding other countries in the Latin American and Caribbean region. Thank you, Virginia. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I don't know if you can see my presentation on the screen. Can you? All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, first of all, to the Ministry of Energy and the IEA for the opportunity. And I'd like to focus on a crucial issue that is the residential consumption of energy that has increased hugely. It represents a third of the total electricity consumption in the region. 75% of this consumption is related to lighting and air conditioning. There are many factors and challenges in the residential sector energy efficiency of the region. 25 countries subsidize electricity, and those subsidies represent more than 1% of the GDP of those countries. So it is a quite important expense, public expense. And thus, we should focus on how to cut those subsidies without harming the market. Excuse me. Sorry, Jose Antonio, do you mind to put the presentation on full screen, please? Yes, thank you. Okay, moving on to the second challenge. I believe it is important to underscore the lack of legal and regulatory frameworks. Only 10 countries have EE laws, and we would like to congratulate Chile for the bill of law that will provide them with such a framework in the future. And there's only 5 countries having EE regulation, and only 15 having energy labeling systems. In this sector, the housing sector, residential sector, even if it is forbidden to the selling, I mean, it's not allowed to sell incandescent light bulbs. There is a huge percentage of light bulbs used in Mexico, for example, as you can see on the screen.
Another major challenge has to do with strengthening institutional frameworks. Only 5 countries have robust institutional frameworks, 9 have medium frameworks, and 13 have low institutional frameworks. There's also a lack of information. There aren't end-use balances, and we need to make progress because without information, it's hard to define a plan, a strategy, programs, or actions. And at the end-user level, there's a lot of lack of knowledge and awareness of the potential savings, and a lack of access to finance, especially in low-income families, which represent a high percentage of households in our country. And this is the picture with COVID-19 and lockdown as represented on this chart. All industries have witnessed a decrease in their consumption, except for the residential sector, according to the Latin American Energy Commission. Due to lockdown, the residential consumption of electricity increased by 20%. And we expect this trend to continue, since many activities will remain based on telework, meaning people will be at home and will be consuming a lot of electrical power. This is an illustration of the appliance manufacturing sector, and this is the head of the Mexican Appliance Manufacturing Association, who published an interview in a Mexican journal and was saying that the outcome of stay-at-home health policies meant that refrigerators allowing people to store food have become fundamental for families' well-being. He's also saying that it's feasible to implement counter-cyclical projects and measures based on upgrading home appliances to provide better living conditions to the population and to significantly contribute to energy efficiency. So what do we need to do? We need to move forward from having good intentions to good investments and better outcomes. How can we do this? We need to have renovated and sustainable homes with energy efficiency based on efficient housing with intelligent financing. This is what Mexico has done, and this is something that could be done with good results in any Latin American country. Mexico has implemented two massive programs that have allowed to replace 2.6 million refrigerators and air conditioning equipment with savings that have represented 3 terawatt hour a year and 1.4 million of tons of carbon dioxide that weren't emitted. And this represented a $674 million project, which meant 168 million US dollars saved by families and 38 million US dollars avoided in subsidies. And these programs generate 21,000 jobs. And many of them are permanent jobs. Others were temporary jobs. Nonetheless, currently the Inter-American Development Bank, which is thinking about designing smart programs, because we have been working on a laboratory for new initiatives and new programs to get the private sector to invest. Well, the Inter-American Development Bank, the City of Mexico, and an operator are currently designing a program to replace 300,000 refrigerators in households in low-income family households. And a private investment fund is taking part in this project with a special line for discounting credits and providing guarantees, meaning that there's a financial structure which is specifically tailored to this project. And I'd like to thank you once again for the invitation. And I insist we need to move from having good intentions to having good investments that will achieve major outcomes in energy efficiency, mitigating climate change, well-being for families, and for all of the countries in the region. Thank you very much, Virginia. And I'll be listening closely to the rest of the panel. Thank you very much, Jose Antonio, for your fascinating presentation. I now have the pleasure to introduce our next panelist, another woman, Paula de la Fuente, Head Urban at Tractable Engineering, Chile. Paula is an environmental engineer, graduate from the Madrid University. She's been working in Latin America for 18 years, developing and coordinating projects in energy efficiency, renewables, and the environment, mostly in mining, industrial, and urban sectors. Over the last few years, thanks to the NG Group experience, she has focused on having an overview for holistic solutions and sustainability for decarbonizing cities. You have the floor, Paula. Please remember to turn your microphone on.
Hola, buenos días a todos. Buenas tardes.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm trying to display my slides. Thank you very much for this invitation to tell you about our experience on the guidelines and policies that could be implemented in Chile and the rest of the region to boost the energy efficiency potential there. The panelists, the honorable panelists that I'm very pleased to share this panel with have been sharing their perspectives from the government and from multilateral organizations. And I'd like to speak on behalf of the business community now, especially engineering and consultant firms and service provision firms who provide guidance for cities and companies trying to adapt to a zero carbon future. So we know that today there's a major uncertainty, and we've heard this in many of the previous interventions, and that this uncertainty is mostly due to the pandemic because of the negative outcomes this has had on our economy with lockdowns and changes in daily lives. We're now facing a situation where we cannot afford to neglect the importance of continuing to promote energy efficiency to achieve our emissions reductions targets. The Agency for Renewable Energy, to achieve these targets, thinks that 40% of the reductions must be due to energy efficiency. If you allow me to, I'd like to give you some figures, and it might sound tragic, but I'd like this to be a ground to move forward and to be enthusiastic about promoting energy efficiency for a carbon neutral future. We assess that 78% of global emissions come from cities, whereas cities only cover 2% of the Earth's total surface area. If you look at the industrial sector in Chile, which is one of the most advanced countries in the region, Jose Antonio just told us how much they've been doing on their energy efficiency legislation, but 14% of the emissions come from the industry, plus emissions that come from other industries like transport and that have to do with the industry. Given this situation, if we consider the fact that in Latin America, we're in a context where growth and development in cities and industrial fabric is happening on a daily basis, well, we know that this can't happen if we don't make sure it's happening in an energy efficiency perspective. Now, if you choose to take the business's viewpoint, what are the main barriers to these projects that have to do with reducing our energy consumption? Now, there are shades of situations because it depends on the city or the industry, but I think that there are four major challenges that we're currently facing. First of all, it has to do with legislation, the fact that there are legal standards and clear national energy policies, because this does encourage the implementation of energy efficiency measures. Last year, I had the pleasure to take part in the drafting of a paper that was presented in France at the European Council for an Energy Efficiency Economy. And we used data from official sources to show that all countries around the world that have these plans and policies over the last few years have had the highest decreases in energy consumption, even if they're in an economic expansion, meaning that the decoupling of the economic growth and the energy consumption growth has been successful. In Latin America, we still have a ways to go. And for the time being, we've heard about countries that have most advanced legislation like Chile. Second, the second biggest challenge is that we still come up against the idea that energy efficiency is a cost rather than an investment. And this investment could be recovered in time and generate savings and cut back on greenhouse gas emissions. The third idea is that often there's a short-term vision that prevails, and the experience I've had in Chile and Mexico is that people always want projects with a return on investment within an under 5-year time frame, and this is difficult, especially in countries where energy is cheap compared to European countries, for instance. Finding energy efficiency projects with a 5-year return on investment often means that we're not looking at the highest impact energy efficiency projects. And the fourth barrier has to do with a lack of appetite for change. And I think we need to promote more knowledge and information so that these policies don't scare people off because they might fear a negative impact on their activity. In addition to all of this, we need to add a new huge obstacle which has been created by the pandemic, and it has to do with the fundamental uncertainty on the future business models or volumes of activity. For instance, a mall that was going to invest in energy efficiency right now is probably in a situation where they can't take that decision anymore, because even though gradually people might come back to shop at a mall, they don't know what their business model will look like, meaning that going to a shop and buying things could become a new normal again. But we could also move into a different situation where people would be purchasing more things online. And that is why the current situation is characterized by uncertainty. So the solution is to keep working on legislation, keep making more knowledge available. And regarding investment, I think the time has come to make a huge bet on energy efficiency with the different models we have for financing projects. And I won't go into detail right now because I'm sure we'll have more time to do so on this panel. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Paula, for this fascinating presentation and from giving us the business's viewpoint. I'd now like to invite all of the panelists to answer the following questions. Can I have all of you on my screen now?
Tengo una pregunta para Janet.
Well, first of all, I have a question for Jeanette. Jeanette, according to ECLAC, what do you think the biggest challenges and opportunities are for Latin America to encourage the potential that rests in energy efficiency? Well, as we've heard in these different presentations, we're not starting from scratch. We have institutional frameworks, we have legislation, there are different initiatives in different industries that have to do with the demand side and that have been gradually including new technologies or more efficient appliances. So the movement is underway. What I do know that we need to do now when it comes to institutions or institutional frameworks is strengthen our standards institutes so that they can issue standards and establish the measurements so that we're sure we're going in the right direction. And this is true for all of the industries we've heard about. We also know that multilateral organizations, whether they're multilateral banks such as the Inter-American Development Bank or CAF, have funding possibilities, and they could condition the granting of these funds to having investments, especially now in such a complex situation as the one that has to do with the current pandemic, meaning that we could revise the conditionality and the requirements for these investments regarding environmental efficiency. I think this is fundamental, and that also entails energy efficiency. There are different fora for regional dialogue, for horizontal cooperation, for discussing and consolidating regional databases, whether they have to do with indicators or policies, as is the case for the Observatory for Renewable Energies. What I'm getting at is that there are possibilities for us to further generate or capitalize on the opportunities that exist in the region. And of course, the countries that have the highest incentives, such as Chile, because of the cost of energy in Chile and meaning that they are most interested in improving their energy efficiency, they're excellent references and examples for the rest of the region that might be lagging slightly behind when it comes to mobilizing incentives, institutions, and agreements or partnerships that have to be there implicitly or explicitly between the government and businesses for this to happen. Obviously, all of this has to go along with a truly aggressive educational policy. There has to be more information and communication on energy efficiency and energy savings so that from the demand side, this can materialize. That's what I'd like to say for now. Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Jeanette. That was very interesting, and the issue of education is definitely important. Let's see, I'd like to turn to Ignacio now. Considering the proposals from the Global Energy Commission on human behavior, and there are different examples because the drivers that explain these behaviors aren't always what have prevailed when the energy efficiency policy was designed, meaning that sometimes there are different reasons for human behavior. If you look at New Zealand with retrofitting, they carried out this technical program, but people were more interested in the health benefits than the energy savings. And there are other examples, such as California. Ignacio, what do you think these behavioral drivers could be in our context, in our societies, and how could we identify them to encourage further energy efficiency today? Please turn your mic on.
Bueno, gracias por la pregunta, Virginia. Bueno, Gabriel Prudencio terminó su presentación mostrando todos los beneficios de la eficiencia energética y yo creo que realmente distintas personas, distintos grupos tienen distintas motivaciones. Esta caricatura, ¿cierto?, de los papás apagando la luz de la casa para ahorrar dinero, bueno, efectivamente es un driver. Los niños con una mayor conciencia ambiental haciendo lo mismo por cuidar el planeta es otro driver. Cuando vemos, por ejemplo, los programas de escuela, lo que nos ha servido a nosotros para enganchar, por ejemplo, al Ministerio de Educación en hacer retrofit, mejorar la envolvente térmica de la escuela, no es el ahorro de energía, es mejorar la calidad de vida de los estudiantes, subir la temperatura, bajar los niveles de CO2. Yo creo que hay distintos drivers. A nivel empresarial, es muy importante lo que partí hablando en mi presentación, que tiene que ver con el CAPEX versus el OPEX. Es decir, mientras los gerentes de las empresas tengan el incentivo a maximizar las utilidades del año de la operación por su bono o por lo que sea, bueno, van a tratar de mejorar la producción, bajar los costos directos de producción y no hacer inversiones que tengan retornos en el mediano plazo. Entonces, también tiene mucho que ver con los incentivos que le ponen los mismos dueños de las empresas a los gerentes, o si los gerentes de energía, por ejemplo, tienen dentro de sus KPI, de sus indicadores de gestión, la obligación de reducir sus costos de energía. Bueno, todos esos tipos de incentivos generan beneficios y que redundan en una mayor inversión en eficiencia energética, en energía renovable y otros temas de sostenibilidad.
Thank you very much, Ignacio.
Tengo una pregunta para Paula. Quisiera preguntarle a Paula, desde el punto de vista de ella ahora.
I have a question for Paula. I'd like to know, with the current slowdown, emissions have decreased. This is what we saw in one of the graphs. How can countries make the most of this gain and avoid going back to previous models? How can we make sure that we don't have emissions going back up when we go back to normal? Well, I think that every crisis is an opportunity as well. And it's certainly the case with the pandemic. We've seen a decrease in CO2 emissions for obvious reasons. It's because daily activity has just come to a standstill. And now I think that we need to have a really in-depth analysis. We really need to give a lot of thought to all of the activities that have slowed down or even stopped entirely and that have led to this decrease in CO2 emissions, and see what habits could be maintained in time, and which, of course, have to be given up so that we can go back to a more normal situation. Quite clearly, we're not going to continue to see this drop in CO2 emissions. But some of the habits that we've adopted during the pandemic could remain in what we are now calling the new normality after the pandemic. So I think that's something that we need to give a lot of thought to. I think that industry hasn't seen a fall in CO2 emissions. And I think that where we've seen a fall in emissions has been in the big cities. I think that's where we've seen a standstill in activity with lockdown. And I think it's in the cities that we can try to identify habits that could remain. Thank you very much, Paula. Jose Antonio, I now want to ask you regarding the funding of projects of companies, because usually when a private company has an energy efficiency project, it's usually quite a small project. There are a few exceptions. And normally the banks look at the debt involved in these activities and not the income it might generate. What ideas or suggestions could you share with us to try to overcome some of the barriers to funding? Well, first of all, we have designed a project to try to have a guarantee of savings through the buying of a insurance. This makes it easier to sell certain services. Also, we've designed a platform or a facility so that there can be access to funding. I think that the combination of mechanisms that reduce uncertainty for the user and give access to funding to the companies and to have a guarantee, those are the three pillars to promote this in Latin America and the Caribbean. And it's well adapted, of course, to our countries, which are conditions that are quite different to those where some of these projects started. And there was a bit of interference on this intervention. Thank you very much, Jose Antonio. I think we're running out of time. I'm going to maybe take some of the questions that are on the chat. Just a minute so that I can find those questions. There's a question here to Ignacio. Are we going to improve? Are you planning to improve the regulation?
Bueno, la reglamentación técnica
the technical
que
regulation?
tenemos vigente para todo el país es
Well,
del
the
año
technical
2007.
regulations that dates back
Después,
to
en
2007.
2017 se hizo una actualización de la UC
It was
que aplica
updated in
solamente en
2017,
zonas o ciudades con planes de
but
descontaminación, excepto la metropolitana.
only in some cities, and it's not in the
Aquí hay
metropolitan
como
region.
un trade-off entre
So there's a trade-off here,
mejorar la
really,
eficiencia
between
y subir el costo de la
improving
vivienda,
efficiency
finalmente. Y eso es lo
and
que yo creo
raising the
que
price of housing.
detiene la decisión
And
de
I think
seguir
that's
aumentando
what's
el
been a bit of a
estándar de
break
construcción. Ya la norma del
in improving the
2007 es
standards of
razonablemente
construction.
buena.
The 2017
La del
standard is a good one.
2017
It's
es
reasonably good.
bastante buena, no llega por supuesto a los niveles de
The
energía neta
2007
cero,
one
pero es bastante
good.
buena. Y yo creo que hay
It doesn't
que de a
reach
poco seguir
zero
avanzando.
net
Finalmente,
energy, but it's
aquí
quite
el
good.
gran
But we
freno
have to
es decir,
continue
bueno,
to make
si
headway. I think
construimos
the
mejor, con algunos
major
costos
hindrance here
adicionales, vamos a
is
poder
that
construir
if
menos
we
vivienda. Entonces,
build
esa es una
better with
eterna
better
discusión que hay
standards,
en
we're
el
going
sector
to
público,
build
en el sector
fewer
privado, y que
houses.
yo creo que de a
And so this is a
poco
big
se va
debate we have to
avanzando
have.
a
And little by
mejorar, y
little, we're
esperemos que
going
ya en los
to
próximos años la norma del
improve. And
2017
we
sea
do hope
extensiva
that in a
a todo
few
el
years'
país.
time, the 2017 standard will apply to the country as a whole. Well, I think we're going to have to close here. Maybe just a last question for Jeanette, but I'm going to ask you to be very brief. On firewood, the IEA recommends bioenergy as a secondary energy.
Bueno, básicamente contribuye a la contaminación.
Well, yes, this firewood used as energy is very polluting, so we have to reduce its consumption. There are other possibilities, bioenergy, but in a different context, and it's a different approach. It's more linked to the circular economy, where you're reusing residues from farming, for instance. But in the case of firewood, the idea would be to gradually reduce consumption of firewood. Thank you very much. Well, we have now reached the end of this panel. Thank you very much to all the panelists for your presentations and interventions, and thank you for having presented your experiences. Thank you very much, and Federico, I hand back over to you. Thank you very much, Virginia. Thank you to all the panelists. Thank you for sharing your experiences and thoughts, and show how in the region and in Chile, there's a lot of potential. We can really make the most of all the opportunities of energy efficiency. Well, we're now reaching the end of this conference that has really highlighted a number of national and international initiatives, and has also shown that there's a long way to go still. And I'd like to say here that after almost 3 hours, we have over 350 people attending on both channels of transmission, and also we've had a peak of 450 people connected on both broadcasting channels. So it's really interesting, and we had connections from the whole Latin American region, from Mexico, Ecuador, Argentina, from the United States as well, and also from European countries such as the UK and Belgium. And despite the time zone, we've also been told that we had connections from Asian countries such as India. So I think this is a good indicator of how relevant this theme is, not just in Chile, but in the whole world. And this is something that we clearly saw with all of the speakers. So to end, I'd like to thank the International Energy Agency. Thank you for having been with us. Thank you for having organized this event. And I'd like to recall to all our partners, and ESCO, ACESOL, ACERA, GIS, Generadores de Chile, and all those who have supported this event. We'd like to thank you. We'd like to thank those who have been listening today. And I would like to now hand over to Francisco Lopez, who will be pronouncing the closing speech. Subsecretary, I can see you're on the screen. Thank you very much for being here. And if you can switch your microphone on, and you'll be closing this event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear Federico, and thank you to all of you that have shared this event from all over the world. This reflects a great interest in the subject, and we can see that from the many countries in Chile, Los Ánimos, Coyhaique, and many other countries that were connected, and many different countries from all over the world that Federico mentioned: Colombia, United States, France, and many others. Obviously, today we are experiencing challenging times. We have pandemics, climate change, and many other threats that push us to think differently, think out of the box to create a different world. And as a country, we are very proud of our decision to go carbon neutral by 2050. Energy efficiency has a crucial role in this respect, since, as we have seen today, energy efficiency is a powerful ally to reach our goals, environmental goals. According to the IEA, 35% of the measures needed to achieve sustainable development come from energy efficiency. in other countries. This is related to Chile, and in other countries, the figures are the same. And this in the framework of our carbon neutrality by 2050. There are many benefits related to this approach for the consumers, for their savings, the bills they have to pay, and also improve productivity and creates jobs. One of the problems that were mentioned today by Mr. Oriol was exactly that, the potential to create jobs, and also the idea that energy efficiency is the first fuel at a global level. This is actually an engine for job creation. In the same vein, Mr. David Tuck reaffirmed what Mr. Oriol was saying, the need for governments to commit themselves with energy efficiency in this idea of creating green jobs, and in the end, generating a virtuous circle at an international level. Mr. Motherway mentioned how the pandemic had a positive impact in emissions, but we need now to recover in a sustainable way to keep growing in a sustainable manner. And this needs a proper regulation and technology as well that has a crucial role. Some other ideas I would like to mention from the first panel, the two sides of the coin: transparency for the consumers related to energy labeling, and how we need to close gaps to improve the efficiency of house appliances, to work together with different sectors and actors in the economic field. Buildings as well was very important, and the neutral carbon building campaign by 2050, the importance of building networks amongst public and private actors. Mr. Karol Sprusinski from IKEA talked about the importance of businesses that need to take bold steps to embrace sustainability in their business day-to-day work. He mentioned some examples, also tax incentives and others. Our second panel was very interesting as well, and we could hear speakers mentioning the crucial role that our bill of law in Chile is going to play in the future, and the challenges we face in order to reach carbon neutrality and energy efficiency. We heard Mr. Delice and Ms. Sanchez from CLAC. She mentioned the Regional Observatory for Sustainable Energy and the importance that it has also to work in education. José Antonio Urtiaga talked about walking the talk, and he gave us some specific advices in order to implement energy efficiency measures. Then Paulo de la Fuente mentioned the 4 main challenges we have to overcome to reach an energy efficiency policy at a global level. To conclude, I would like to mention the importance of energy efficiency in the implementation of the economic reactivation for a number of reasons. First, the cut of costs for the beneficiaries, for the consumers directly, and also because of the jobs linked to this kind of initiatives. Secondly, carbon neutrality is linked to energy efficiency, and they go along and complement each other as measures. This is why, as a country and as a government, we have worked to reinforce energy efficiency and to put it in the center and the heart of our public policies. To conclude, I'd like to underscore the individual role that we all have. Everyone, from the individual level to a collective level, we are all responsible from our actions. Our relationship with energy has to be considered at a long term, taking into account technology developments and considering the legacy we are going to give to future generations. Many of the panelists mentioned that there's no cleaner energy than the one that we are not consuming. Thank you very much for your participation today, to the different speakers, to your presence, and I hope to see you very soon.